Good evening, members, officers, members of the public, people watching us at home, and welcome you to the Planning Committee meeting. Can you switch your phones off or put them on silent mode, please? I'm going to make a slight change to the agenda. I'm going to take item 8 first. So item 8 will be instead of item 5 or 4, yeah? Right, you ready, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay, item 1, apologies for absence. Bill?
I've had apologies from Councillor John Stroud-Turp, Chair.
Any more apologies? No. Thank you. Declaration of interest under planning law. Anybody? I think we all had, I had emails on every item, email or contact. Yeah. Same here. Everybody same? Yep. Okay.
Chair, sorry, just to add on top of the emails, this is in my ward. A number of the objectors I know prior to this application due to the nature of them being my residents.
Yep.
Chair, could I make a further declaration that I wasn't able to attend the visit today to the particular site in question, but I did make a visit to the site yesterday by myself to have a look around.
Yep.
Yeah, I've also had communications with the applicant or their representatives at various points, I think pre-app as well. So
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Item 3. It's minutes of the meeting held on 7th of March 24. It's a variation and amended version of the minutes from 7th of March 24 meeting of the Planning Committee regarding item 4. Brentford Football Club has been produced. Track changes have been retained to indicate the revision from that approved by Planning Committee at the 9th May meeting. I'll pass you on to Simon.
Okay, members, so this item has already been considered at the last committee meeting, and you approved the minutes. Since then, there has been a request in the nature of a complaint, but certainly a request to review those minutes. We've put that through our complaints officer here at Hounslow. They've looked at this carefully, and without any criticism to the officer, Mr. Lee, who prepared the minutes, they can see that certain items, not in the decision that you reach, but in the overall text, were missing or not quite put correctly. So they've responded to that by carefully following the video and the recording word for word to see what was needed. As I say, the decision has actually not changed at all. It remains exactly as it was. However, there is some text within that. Now, of course, it's not Mr. Lee's job to provide you with a verbatim set of minutes of every word that was said at a meeting. Otherwise, you'd spend all the time following the closure of this meeting, just reading those, ready to come back to the next meeting. We don't do that. We summarise, and that's what we've done. However, we've responded to this to try to be as fair to all parties as we can. Notwithstanding that, we have had a further email from the supporters of Volcra who have made the following comments, and I'm just going to read these out, and I'll read them out fairly slowly. They've looked at all of this, and they've said that they have further additional changes they want made to the minutes tonight, and they actually boil down to this. I've run through the amended minutes, and the following is still incorrect. And that the placing of the academy building near the car park was unjustified, as fit young players could walk easily to a further location. This should read as possible. The placing of the academy building was unjustified, as fit young players could walk easily to a further location, as 3 other sites were suggested for the temporary academy building on the plans. In my email to Ms McCoy of 4th of April 2024, I had clearly written it was not the placing of the car park which was unjustified, as fit young players could walk easily from a further location. It was the positioning of the academy building. So I think that what they're looking for is the word, removal of the words near the car park. Now, it's a matter for you whether you want to remove those words near the car park to overcome that concern or not. As I say, it is not material to the decision. The decision is simply not going to change. But this is a means of trying to avert the concerns of the objectors, in particular those from Ogra, who were concerned about this. So I put that to your committee, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Guys, there's no debate on it. If there's any question, you can ask Simon any question now and then make a decision on that one. Do we agree? Everybody, yes? Okay.
And are we including the removal of the car park, near the words near the car park in that? That's right.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair, I'd like it recorded that I abstain.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Right. Item 4 is minutes of the meeting held on 9th of May 2024, pages 13 to 15. I'll take both accuracy and matter arising together. Is there any accuracy or matter arising? Everybody's happy? I can sign this. Agreed? Thank you. Right. As I said, I'm going to change the agenda item. I'm taking item 8 first, which is Hamrock, Brentford. Down to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Rees. I'm the Head of Development Management, and tonight I am presenting the Fraser's Timber Yard application. I'm going to do quite a long presentation, sorry, because I'm going to have to review in some detail the balancing exercise that needs to be undertaken by members. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail, more so than I'd usually do, but I'll come to that later. But I will start off by describing the site. So this is an aerial image, obviously with the red arrow pointing to the Fraser's Timber Yard. We're in Brentford off the Ham, so it's just to the southwest of the Brentford town centre. There is another aerial view here, but I'm just going to pause on the next aerial view slide to describe the site. It's a little bit more zoomed in, but it gives you a better idea of the buildings. So Fraser Timber Yard is the building to the centre left. The Ham is just to the north. You'll see the Grand Union Canal, River Brent, just to the southern side.
Sorry, Matthew, do you mean the centre right?
Centre right, excuse me. Sorry, thank you, Councillor. Centre right. Centre left, then the building to the west of the Fraser Timber Yard is Shire Place. So there's 16 flats there. I would also draw your attention to the houseboats to the south of the site as well, because that would be considered as part of this process as well. The Ballymore scheme is to the northeast, so just off the slide there, but that includes Hollandbury House and Calvert House that are going to be covered within this presentation as well. This is within the Grand Union Canal Conservation Area. It's just outside the town centre boundary, so just to the southwestern side of the town centre boundary. And then Syon Park is a Grade 1 listed park. And within Syon Park, not sure how best to show you, is Flora's Column, which is a Grade 1 listed building. So it's within Syon Park. There's a picture of it later, so I can come back to that. So this is just a few photographs of the site and the surroundings. So this is a photo from the top floor of Calvert House. So you're looking onto Fraser's Timber Yard in the centre of that image. Then that's of course Augustus Close, which is the road, the elevated roadway next to the site. Beyond that is Syon Park, and you can see Flora's Column. Actually, you probably can't. Sorry, if you're close enough, you can see it. There's a better slide up further down the line, and then there's Shire Place as well. This is a view looking from the eastern side. So this is from just outside Hollandbury House, looking back towards the Timber Yards. And then we have a view from the ham itself looking onto the timber yard as it is in situ currently. Again, the timber yard. And then, so this is Shire Place. So I'll pause briefly because this is showing the relationship between the two sites. I'll come to it when it comes to the elevations, but we're looking at a 6-storey building on the position where the Fraser's timber yard is at the moment, and that's its proximity, that's its relationship to Shire Place. So this is from the Brentford project, from Augustus Close, looking towards Hollandbury House, Calville House and Hugh House. And then we are on Augustus Close now, looking back towards Fraser's timber yard with the houseboats on the left-hand side. Now we're starting to walk around the Thames path. So we're going to the rear of the Fraser's timber yard, and then walking down, you can see the houseboats on the left-hand side and the timber yard on the right-hand side. And worth noting, there's the ladder there that offers access to a houseboat. The other houseboats are accessed further down the Thames path. And again, so we're now walking down along the river, the Thames path, and then a view back up towards the timber yard. So that's Shire Place just on the left-hand side. And then the timber yard again. And then again, so that's the space between the timber yard and Shire Place. And again, along the riverside. And again, so this is looking back along towards Thames Pass facing east. And so now this is a view back up towards the Brentford project under construction. So this is the existing site plan. This is what it looks like at the moment. So as I say, it's a timber yard, it's timber merchants. So an employment use, a commercial use. And this is the proposal. So this is the ground floor. This is the site plan. So the top of this picture is the ham with 2 disabled bays within it. Then there are 2 buildings which form part of this proposal. The building on the right-hand side is 10 stories. The building on the left-hand side is 6 stories. There's obviously some landscaping, some public space to the centre of those. And then as we move up, we will see first to 3rd floor, which are largely similar. You can see the makeup of the buildings. So mostly shared parts, services at ground floor level, and then the units rising up. And now we're moving up through the buildings to the 4th floor, 5th floor. The building on the left terminates at the 5th floor level. And then we move up to 10 stories on the right-hand side. And then, so these are the elevations. So this is the southeast elevation. So you can see the 10-story building on the right-hand side, and then the lower building on the left-hand side. So that's coming from the riverside, the canal side. Now this is the north elevation. So this is from the ham side, looking back towards the building. So this is a southwest elevation. So again, you can see the smaller building and then the larger building beyond. And then conversely, the northeast elevation, taller building and smaller building. And then a section from Thames Path, another section from Shire Place. So this is on the boundary of Shire Place. And then this is quite a detailed landscaping plan, which again, I can come back to in a bit more detail, but that's the detailing of what the landscaping at ground floor level would look like. And then some landscaping visuals, and then some views from the Brentford project. So these are CGI views looking back towards the building. And then finally, I will pause on this one, which is the verified view from Syon Park. So you are within Syon Park, and that's Flora's column, which is in the centre of the picture, just to the right-hand side, with a proposed building beyond that. So that's a description of the presentation. So what I do need to say is that this is a balancing exercise. So there are positives and there are negatives from the scheme, and I'd like to explore them in some detail as part of this application. Broadly, there are issues with the height here. So it's a tall building, it's 10 stories, it is outside a town centre location, it is within a conservation area. The policy basis for tall buildings does tend to change quite frequently at this particular point in time. So our local plan is now outdated in terms of directing tall buildings to town centre locations. The London plan is still relevant, but the section about having an allocated site is now superseded by an appeal decision. So broadly, the assessment of tall buildings in suitable locations is based on an assessment of various issues which are already covered within the report itself. The positives that have been given is that it is essentially in proximity to the town centre boundary. It is acting as a transition piece between the town centre and the smaller buildings within the ham. That's the case that's been made. Amenities has been assessed as a potential issue, but again, we have done daylight and sunlight studies in terms of impact on the neighbouring properties, particularly in Shire Place, but also within the Brentford project. And there is no significant loss of daylight sunlight to those properties. They do pass the daylight and sunlight test. I will linger on the houseboat. So these are planning units, they are residential units, they are worthy of, sorry, not worthy, that's probably not the right word, they do need to be assessed in terms of impact on daylight, outlook and privacy, and they are slightly movable because the tide goes up and down, so the boats move with it, but broadly there is going to be significant impact in terms of daylight and sunlight analysis. They do still have, they're on the southern side, so they get the sunlight into the boats. They are essentially dual aspect, you have the outlook from the other side as well, so we don't believe that in itself is a reason grounds for refusing the application. Heritage, I do need to linger on somewhat because we have objections from Historic England, which we do have to take very seriously. And I think they're probably quite clear what their objections are. So it is looking from Sion Park, Grade 1 listed park, towards a Grade 1 listed building, and the impact on the setting of that listed building, which again, it's quite clear from this view that there will be an impact on it. Our own conservation specialists don't afford the same level of
Sorry, Matthew. That image, is that what it would look like if this application was built?
Yeah,
Was
so
that
that's it's got the CGI image of
so that sort of
the 10
tower
story building.
block to the left of Flora's column. That's what with.
That's correct, yeah. So sorry if I didn't make that clear. So it is a CGI image showing what the impact on that would be. Again, our conservation colleagues have not raised the same level of concern in terms of impact on heritage by virtue of the fact that they're suggesting that this is, you've got Ballymore in the background already. This is something that you would commonly associate with a riverside uses, tall buildings within the background. They haven't raised the same level of concerns as that Historic England have done, but Historic England's objections remain. So they have raised objections to the scheme. Amenity space is another issue that's been raised. There is a shortfall in amenity space over our local plan standards. And I'll flick back to the slide. Sorry for flicking around quite a lot. You can see that they have private amenity space to meet our standards, but not the same level of community amenity space that you would that policies seek to provide. There will be a contribution to public realm, notwithstanding that there isn't a large amount of public realm, there isn't a large amount of green space within proximity to this site. So we think that is a detracting feature from it. And then the final thing that I have to mention in terms of negativity, and again, you may hear from residents who will add to that, is the Environment Agency rejection to the application. And I will have to linger on this, sorry, because they aren't just objecting, they are raising concerns that we've misrepresented their views as well. So I'm going to have to read off this to make sure that they are clear. So if you could bear with me to this, is that they're suggesting that the statements are inaccurate and fail to demonstrate that the work undertaken on site, including the raising of the defence, will not have a negative impact on the flood defence. So they're raising concerns about the works and the raising of the defence will not have an impact on the existing defences. They're concerned about the negative impacts to the flood defence may risk flooding on site and to the surrounding areas. They're concerned about our accuracy of statements about the defence will be properly inspected and maintained to ensure it remains fit for purpose. They are raising concerns that it is not accurate to suggest the applicant has demonstrated the existing flood defence to be utilised as a new flood defence structure has not been demonstrated that it would have a lifespan of 100 years, and the applicant has failed to demonstrate that works to be taken on site, including the raised element of the defence, will not negatively impact on the integrity of the existing flood defence to be used. So these are objections that have been retained. Because the Environment Agency objected, we do have to refer this application to the Secretary of State if they cannot be overcome. As a way of verbal addendum, that first stage of referral has been undertaken, so that application has been reported to the Secretary of State. It will obviously be updated when the outcome of this application is known. So that's the negatives as we put it. As I say, there may be other concerns. It's balancing that now against what the positives of the scheme are. So there are benefits in terms of public realm, access to the public space on the site. There's biodiversity net gain improvements. But I think the key one is the housing. And this is an 100% affordable housing scheme. So this is 24 social rent units. This is 36 intermediate units. I mean, I know members have got a lot of anecdotal evidence about the importance of having housing within the borough, but in terms of actual policies, we have the MPPF saying substantial weight must be given to housing within brownfield sites. We have significant imposing housing targets that we have to deliver. The London planners' policies on optimising housing within sites such as this, and policies that seek to maximise the amount of affordable housing. This is a sustainable town centre location. This is where we are meant to be directing housing, and I think everyone's probably seen it. We produced a pre-application advice in 2022 or something, where we raised concerns of the scheme. It was broadly, not limited to, but broadly, it was the provision of 100% affordable housing that flips that, because we afford so much weight to the affordable housing provision. But I will conclude this presentation on the core issue is that it's for members to decide what weight they afford to these things. So there is a weighting exercise that has to be undertaken. You need to balance the positives against the negatives of the scheme when you come to a conclusion as to whether or not it's acceptable. So just to reiterate, I haven't presented you a scheme that ticks every single policy box at this stage. I've presented a scheme that has some issues attached to it. And it's a balancing exercise. And as we've made clear within the report, we believe that the benefits of this scheme outweigh the negatives. And on that basis, if members come to the same conclusion, then we can approve this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. Members, questions for Matthew? Councillor Bowring?
So can you go back to the aerial shot that shows the boat confines? It's right at the beginning. Yes, I think it's the red and white boat, just where it says River Brent, which is obviously right next to the site. So I think we've all had this email from the people on the boat who say they're not objecting, but they've got a number of conditions, a number of things they're concerned about. One is the right of access once the river wall's been rebuilt. Is there anything that we're able to do there in terms of a condition?
I mean, Simon may have about how far this is related to planning and access rights. To our understanding at this point, the developer are amenable to having a condition that maintains that access rights, and as recommended, it has that condition attached to it. So we do have a planning condition that seeks to preserve access to that houseboat in particular, because as I suggested, that is the houseboat that's accessed through the ladder over the river. It's not the one that's accessed further down the Thames path.
Right. They currently have a provision of utilities from the timber yard. Is that something that can be secured by condition and retained?
So my fear of that one is that planning conditions have to be related to planning. That's one of the 6 tests of a planning condition. I'm going to suggest, and look at Simon a little bit as well here, that I don't believe that is sufficiently within the sphere of our influence within the planning considerations that can be attached to a planning condition. I don't know if you want to add to that, Simon, sorry.
Which utilities did you have in mind, Councillor Barry?
They have water and electricity. They currently have it.
This is for the houseboats, yeah?
It's for one single boat, the one that's literally right next to it.
Yeah, I can see that boat by the word River Brent.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one in as much as if those utilities are to be provided, they will almost certainly come through that way. I would have thought it is a matter ultimately of negotiation with the owners of the land rather than specifically a planning condition, because it's beyond the site. So the red line will finish before we get to the houseboat. So therefore, I think it's an appropriate thing for negotiation with the owner of the site. It might arguably, it's slightly difficult because although it's a houseboat, it is potentially a movable object. It is potentially something that could be looked at as a planning obligation, because you can deal with planning obligations outside of the site. So there are 2 options there. I think with Matthew on this one, I don't think it would be appropriate as a condition because we're not within the site. The only way we would do this is a Grampian condition. I think if we were going to do it at all, we do it by 106, but far better if the owner of the boat negotiated with the owners of the land, and no doubt some accommodation could be achieved.
Great. And then the final point raised is, I pointed this out to you, Matthew, on the site visit, is there's a particular corner there where a lot of antisocial behaviour has happened. It's a sort of a very sort of quiet, overshadowed corner, and there were concerns on the landscaping that actually this was, rather than creating a transitional space that people would walk through to get to that main overseen sort of tree and bench area, that the current landscaping plan might be encouraging people to congregate in this discrete corner, and that some minor changes could help design out crime. Is that something that we could look at?
Yes, because that's absolutely something that we could look at. I'm loath to conclude anything on anyone's behalf without consulting the police, the designing out crime team. But that is obviously a legitimate concern. We are looking at raising the flood wall in that location, should the application be approved anyway. So it probably even exacerbates that particular issue that you've raised. We could deal with that through the landscaping condition. We could add an informative to say that this is what members are looking for. But as I say, I wouldn't want to propose or suggest members to propose an amendment to that condition without having gone through that designing out crime
that
process.
could be reserved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then last one, I don't understand about this flood wall. From what I read, they're improving the flood wall, but the Environment Agency are against those improvements, or do they not think they're improving it enough? What's going on there?
So I believe, and again, they have raised concerns that we were misrepresenting, which is why I read it to you. So the flood wall needs to be sufficient to protect the site from a 1 in 100 flood risk event, climate change impacted. So I think the concerns are that they aren't satisfied that it's entirely replacing the flood wall, it's going to be suitable for purpose, and B, about the maintenance of it. So there's those two issues, whether it's fit for purpose, whether it does fully replace the existing wall, and whether it can be maintained for the duration of the development. As I say, we are hoping that that can be negotiated through condition. We don't want the standoff. We don't want the situation. In terms of a reason for refusal, we're suggesting we don't think that's there for this particular issue. But outside of this planning committee, I'm hoping that can be negotiated before we hit the threshold.
Yeah.
Of
And so it's one tiny thing I've got as well as the ladders and the mooring rings. Is there sufficient that the new wall would have the access from the ladders and the new mooring rings in it? If not, can that be updated?
So that is the intention as it stands,
Great.
and
Thank
included within.
Thank you, Chair.
Is that it?
Sorry. Yes.
Excellent. Okay, Councillor Lal.
Chair, most of my questions have been already answered, but no, it's okay. It's important to raise those issues because we all had that same email. However, Matthew, you mentioned the Environment Agency. You mentioned in your preamble about the Environment Agency, and you referred to a fence now and again. So I just need clarification what that fence is about. And I'll take on board what our legal advice is. It looks like most of the stuff that's already been stated by Councillor Dan Baring perhaps is outside this actual planning application. But I think we've all agreed to a certain extent that the houseboats in particular, the access, the new utilities and the provision that they have at the moment, as far as possible outside the planning process, during maybe negotiations later on, must try to look after the interests of the householders, the houseboats that are there. But if you can explain a little bit about the fence and the flood wall.
So yeah, sorry. Fence, if I've suggested fence, sorry, that's not the centre of the concerns, it's this wall. So I'm looking at the wall at the moment. So, well, sorry, maybe that's not the best slide. The one outside the Fraser Timber, it needs to be raised to a height of 2 meters. So if you envisage it being 2 meters tall, that's how tall it has to be to prevent this 1 in 100 year flood risk event. So we're looking at a tall wall. There are plans to be doing this along stretches of the River Thames anyway, so I think the wall is likely to be proposed at some point anyway. In terms of the riverboat, so it does, this particular issue that Councillor Baring was referring to manifests itself with this one houseboat, which is on the plan, because they have access over the flood wall, the ladder, and their utilities come straight from there. The other houseboats are accessed further up the Thames path beyond the application site, so access isn't necessarily a problem for them. Access is a problem for this singular houseboat, which we've been dealing with. Notwithstanding that, and you'll find out, the houseboats are still objecting to this application. They're objecting to issues such as loss of light, loss of outlook, impact of the development, overlooking and such. You'll hear that from them. So we haven't overcome them by any stretch of the imagination. Those objections are still there, but in terms of those concerns, it's manifest in this one houseboat.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Todd, listen, you came in a bit late. We already started on it. You can ask questions, but you'll not be able to. Yeah.
And I apologise for the traffic in Hounslow. Matthew, viability report. Is there a viability report?
There is not, councillor, no, that we don't ask for a viability report where there's 100% affordable housing proposed on the sites.
Okay. Can you help me? I'm trying to put this in context. There was an application sometime previous, I forget the time, which you rejected.
So we may be referring to the pre-application advice. So
Sorry, I'm
we
using the wrong word. Same.
sorry, yeah. So what happens is that we offer pre-application advice. It's all confidential, as it were, up until the point of an application being submitted. And when it's submitted, the commercial sensitivity of it falls away because it's an application. So then we publicize it for everyone to see.
Okay.
So I think residents have been reading that pre-application report, which is quite negative because, as I suggested earlier, it's a scheme that doesn't have the same amount of affordable housing and there's some design changes in there as well. So I think that might be what we're referring to. Sorry.
How does affordable housing negate bulk and mass?
It doesn't. It doesn't negate bulk and mass. It's this planning balance that we keep having to come back to. So we're not suggesting that it negates the bulk and mass. We're suggesting when you feed that into this balancing consideration, and again, this is for members to do themselves, affordable housing carries more weight in terms of benefits than bulk and mass does in terms of negatives.
Can I push you back? What's the weight of affordable against private?
So sorry, I know I don't mean to sound like I'm avoiding the question. It's the weight is for members to decide themselves. What I did do, I'm not sure, I think you might have been here, is I listed the weight afforded to housing and affordable housing.
I'm
And
trying to simplify my questions rather than go into detail. But the bottom line seems to be that you weren't happy with it, and at some time, was it simply the conversion to affordable that lifted the gates, or what?
it wasn't simply that, but yeah, no, I don't think there's any point in hiding behind this. Affordable housing, if there wasn't 100% affordable housing proposed on the site, it would not come out the same way in a balancing exercise. It does change the consideration of the scheme, and that's material to the planning balance, the planning
Can
consideration.
you help me? Can you look at page 212? And it alludes to the, starting at 211, actually, 8142. We all respect the views of the design review team, but I'm quite shocked that you delegated it down to the chairman to sign it off without the rest of the committee endorsing it.
Sorry if we've misrepresented that, councillor, if it's not clear. It was the entire design review panel that undertook the first assessment, and then what happens is it will go back to design review panel with amendments. And I think that was the point where the chair suggested that there wasn't a need for that second design review panel.
But does he have that mandate to ignore the panel?
Oh, sorry, go on. Yeah, sorry.
So it's part of the way the design review panel is structured is that you can have a full review with the entire panel with the chair. We've got 3 co-chairs,
Yep.
2 men, 1 woman, 2 women, 1 man. And then once they've done the full review with the full panel, there's an option, depending on what the changes are that have been submitted in response to the design review panel, for something called a chair's review. That is an option depending, and that's matter of judgment for officers and the urban design officers and the chair of the design review panel, whether another full review is required or whether a chair's review is sufficient. And in this instance, it
That's
was
very
chair's
clear.
review.
Thank you. Can I just
Go on.
Okay. Yeah. Mention of the Environment Agency, Matthew, and their quite rigid objection. The report alludes that you can bypass that. I'm using my words, not yours, by putting what they seek in some sort of, I presume, the 106 conditions.
So we can't bypass it. So the Environment Agency objecting to an application essentially removes the decision making, as it were, from this committee. It means we have to refer it to the Secretary of State to make the final decision on the application, and the Secretary of State will review the Environment Agency's comments and decide whether or not they want to call in the application for further consideration. So that's the process behind it. So no, we can't circumnavigate it. We have recommended conditions without the benefit of the Environment Agency agreeing to a scheme and recommendations in that basis. But we, as I say, we don't believe it's ground for refusal application. We do need to make a decision on the application ergo, this is how we framed it tonight.
But can I assume, the chair, that the developer wasn't prepared to go along with what the Environment Agency wanted or not?
I don't. I'm really worried about misrepresenting. So no, they've engaged. I think there's been four stages of referral discussions, plans, but so they have been endeavouring to overcome the concerns, and I believe that there's still an intention to do so. It's just as of this point today, the go-between between them haven't satisfied the Environment Agency, so they have made efforts to do so.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, Simon.
Just to assist you with those very valid questions, if I may, Chairman.
Please do.
We've sent the consultation document to the Secretary of State through the Planning Casework Unit. They have 21 days to come back to us if they have any concerns. Therefore, any resolution you make today will be sort of subject to that 21-day notice period taking place. It's also, of course, subject to the 106, which may well take as long or if not longer to actually be agreed as well. And a GLA, you see, because I'm a non-Londoner, I forget the GLA, bless them. So there are a number of stages where it could be held up before the actual decision is made. So
That's very clear. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Chair. As I'm going back, Matthew, I'm going back to the boat again. It's loss of daylights, yeah, and privacy shadowing. So are we going to compensate them, or they will be allowed to move away from the site a little bit, or is that in the scheme?
So the houseboats are attached to moorings, so they can't move them. The planning unit is the moorings, so no, the houseboats can't move. I'm afraid, I mean, in the planning scheme of things, they don't benefit from compensation. It is as is proposed in front of you. It's a case of assessing if that harm is bad enough to refuse the application. I'm showing you the slides now just to give you a bit more of an idea. So there are balconies that are just above the houseboats. There is some outlook into the boats. I don't think we can say that there's no impact on the houseboats. I think we need to be making it clear that we don't believe that that's sufficient harm to refuse the application in the balancing exercise, as I keep going back to.
Councillor Lukey.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of things on the ownership and the type of tenancies here. We've allowed, or we've arrived at. Is it a 40? Is it a 30-70 split? Or I can't remember what it was. 20. What have I got here? Well, I didn't write it down, to be honest. But it's I'm asking why it can't be inverted. There are more right to buy. Not right to buy. What's the? I'm sounding like Biden now, and yeah, shared ownership. There are more shared ownership than affordable rent. How did we arrive at this proportion, and why can't we? And to what extent can we invert that and have more affordable rent than shared ownership here? The other thing on there, whilst I'm here, the other thing is I see the Guinness Trust are now mentioned as a affordable as a social landlord. But I know from other applications that we've had and developments that haven't quite worked out that developers have sought to remove some, if not all, the social housing from an application. Couple in my ward even. I know that have had the affordable reduced or removed. How can we guarantee that this will not happen? Because these have happened. These removals of the affordability have come through a subsequent planning application that officers have allowed through their delegated powers with little comment. in the same way as we've had and also on the heritage stuff, in the same way as we've had comment from Heritage England or Historic England, I can't remember the difference. We've had similar from the Garden Trust as well. And how much is that weighed in that respect? And I just want to know what happened when you had your pre-app with the applicants. Page 169, it says the height. One of the comments is height will be out of scale for a tiny space, and you said in the report says height and massing have been adjusted following pre-application feedback to fit the site context. I'd like to know how what happened there, what the approach was prior, but why are we looking at a 10-story building here? Right on the river, when the masses that we have are more in the Brentford projects in the town centre, and this is we've got, even though it's a 6-story building next door to the 3-story block, I forget what it's called. We've got low rise there. How much of this could be a precedent for putting more tall buildings? I've got some commercial. I'm not going to put ideas in anybody's head, but they must have thought about it. A few developers, no doubt, have been sniffing around. The office blocks a bit further north along the river. How much of this is a precedent? You remember everything I've said? Yeah, made a note.
Written them
Thank you
down.
very
Got
much.
it.
I
Got it,
don't.
Councillor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. So the first question was about why can't we flip the affordable associated rent with the intermediate units? So what's happening here is that what we would be policy compliant is 50% affordable homes, which is our strategic target, which would be 30 homes, of which the split would be 70-30 in favour of social rent. So this exceeds a policy compliant. It's a benefit, it's an improvement over that. And because it's an improvement over what our policies require, we don't go through this viability process. So I am assuming that, and it is an assumption, that this is maximum viable they can provide on site. There does have to be viability attached to the scheme, but I don't have that information to present you tonight. All I can say is that it exceeds our policy requirements. Your second point about reduction issues is quite clear. You've heard me say lots tonight how much weight we afford to affordable housing. If they want to change that, it does need to come back as a planning application. We have to consider it at the time, but I can't commit to what that decision will be. But if planning committee, if officers afford affordable housing great weight at this stage, then it's obviously not going to be looked at quite as favourably if there isn't as much affordable housing on a scheme coming forward next time round. Why is 10 stories acceptable in this location? I mean, so hopefully I covered that to a degree within my report. It is along the lines of, it is still a central location, it's an accessible location, it is a brownfield site, it is in proximity to town centre, even if it isn't, it's in proximity to tall buildings, even though it's not within that town centre location, and it does step down to the 4-story buildings. The easy answer to your question is there is no precedent in planning. It doesn't mean that anyone else can come forward with 10 stories. And notwithstanding that, it would still remain within our control. So we would consider it on the merits of the scheme, a scheme coming forward next time, if that is the case.
So on the basis down there, we have a number of employment locations. You've had some that we even displaced from the high street, motorwise, for example. Used to be there next to Magpie and Crown, and now it's around the back there. And there's various other. There's quite a lot of employment that occurs there, and we've taken one away. One is being taken away if this is approved. What are the guarantees? And I know a little while back, the former director, I don't want to remember his name, and the former leader removed a lot of employment sites for housing. There was a paper and a policy a few years ago. How are we going to make sure that these employment sites stay there for working? A lot of it is working class folk that work in these places. How are we going to preserve these? what guarantees have we got to preserve these gentlemen?
Thank you, Chair. So central to our policies at the moment, which is what we're applying against, is the viability of the proposed employment use. So as part of this process, they have to demonstrate that they've marketed it for a prolonged period of time. It isn't viable for an alternative employment use, and it's only at that stage that we accept housing on a site, and that would be applied across the board with any application within an employment site. They have to go through this same test. There is a local plan, as you're well aware, that's forthcoming that will deal with this as well. Reg 19 due in a few weeks' time. Sorry, the major round of consultation in a few weeks' time. That's how we would look at the employment use. That's more about an evidence-based and emerging policies. In terms of the policies that we have today, this does comply with them, as I say, which is designed to base it around viability, because you don't want an industrial site sitting empty, conversely.
Okay. I can't see any more hands. I'll come back to you. Reese, come back to you.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Matt. I think what John was alluding to in his earlier question is what's changed? How has the scheme evolved beyond the affordable in terms of design? What has evolved from pre-app to now? As a start.
Hi, Leo Hall, I was the case officer for the application. So when we first started the pre-application discussions, I think the main element was the fact that we had one solid building rather than the two blocks that we now have. The height was more or less as it is now. It hasn't come down a lot, to be frank. So since those initial schemes came in, there was a new proposal to basically carve a new public route through the centre of the site, which would have obviously the public play space, which will be available to all members of the public, and to open up that new kind of extra riverside access to improve permeability around the site. So there was that. The overall quality of public realm has come a long way in terms of, yeah, obviously the landscaping and other elements of that, and the greening aspirations as well. And I think the other main improvement that's happened is the quality of accommodation has actually really improved. So we have 100% dual aspect units now, which is very good. I think there are obviously constraints because of the proximity of the buildings to one another and the constraints of the surrounding area. But we do consider that the quality has come a long way, and many of the balconies, despite the shortfall of on-site communal amenity space, many of the balconies do exceed the requirements that are the minimum set by the local plan policy SC5. So they are sort of generous spaces there. And then obviously, yeah, the fundamental change has been the introduction of 100% affordable housing, which has been a leap from, I think, an initial proposal of about 10%. So obviously that has quite significantly changed the course of the discussions, and it's why we are where we are now. So I think those are sort of the main points. Obviously, we have had other changes that have arisen through transport comments in terms of improving servicing and the quality of and the access to the cycle storage and servicing arrangements. And yeah, so I think in a nutshell, those are the main improvements.
Thank you. That actually, we'll get your turn. That brings me on to some of the things I was thinking about. So obviously a lot of letters of objection. People saying there's going to be less green space, not more green space, not enough play space, though it looks like there is play space. I guess, could you clarify what we're getting in terms of green space, public space, play space, and the public community improvements? I just think just be helpful to spell these out.
Thank you, Councillor. So, I mean, it's broadly what's being shown on the slides at the moment. So, obviously, at the moment, it's a timber yard, it's an industrial use, it's not publicly accessible, there isn't any green space in it. This is the uplift that you're looking at. So, you can see the green area, the play space. The red bit, I don't know if you can see the 8, but the red bit shaded is also play space. It's like an undercroft. So, this is the uplift over what there is at the moment. So, yeah, you're looking at it basically.
And that's what that play space is, that what, 4 to 11, but we don't have something for 11 to 16. Is that the issue within the application?
That's correct, yes.
Right. Before I take Councillor Todd, that gentleman standing there, I think there's a chair there. Is the chair available, this one? Yeah. Are you okay? Take that one, please. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Todd.
Very kind of you, Chair. Thanks very much. I want to deal with excessive height and massing, if I could please, Matthew. In my view, this is not an appropriate site for tall buildings. And can I go back to rules and regulations? I'm advised that the London Plan Policy D9 states that tall buildings should only be developed in locations that are identified as suitable in development plans. Policy CC3 of the Hounslow Local Plan does not identify this as a suitable site. In several respects, the proposals depart from the guidance provided in the Council's Character, Sustainability and Design Codes, adopted just 2 months ago. These departures include typologies for waterfront development, Part A3, guidance on the location and design of tall buildings, Part A4, and guidance for Brentford, Part B9, which emphasises the need to respect the waterfront. An earlier draft of the SPT specifically identified the Ham as a suitable and unsuitable site for tall buildings. So if I can come back to the main plank of that rather long question, sorry, is the character, sustainability and design codes. I'm advised by a consultant employed by the applicant that it doesn't, that thing only passed 2 months ago, does not preclude any high buildings in an area whatsoever. So could I ask you to comment on that and my wider issues on that particular, would you call it legislation or the design codes SPD? Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll start with policy CC3, and you're quite right. It directs tall buildings to town centre locations. The problem with that is it's a 9-year-old plan now, and policies have updated over time. Our housing targets have near doubled within that time. We have approved, or indeed had imposed on us, approval of tall buildings outside of town centre locations. We don't believe it's sustainable to attach decision making on tall buildings to a policy that has now been superseded. More relevant is the London Plan, because that's from 2021. But again, the first part of it that you referred to about having a plan-led approach to location of tall buildings has to a certain extent been superseded by a High Court challenge. There's now case law attached to that, which as in material consideration again is that it's the latter part of that policy, the bit that talks about the views. There's quite a long list of criteria that you should assess tall buildings against. That is now the policy. That's the relevant part of that policy. The first part has always been superseded by this High Court challenge. And we have now gone through the process in the second part of the London Plan policy and suggesting that it does broadly comply with the content of the policy.
Have a mandate to suddenly put these dated documents to one side. That seems rather bizarre. And secondly, I did specifically mention the guidance provided in the Council's Character, Sustainability and Design Codes, which was only signed off in May. And according to those who advised me, dealt with waterfront developments and guidance for Brentford.
Councillor Todd, I'll assist if that's all right. I'll try my best. So in terms of datedness or otherwise of planning policy, so the local plan 2015 is somewhat out of date, which is why we are now in the process of progressing with a new up-to-date local plan. One of the Matt's pointed out, obviously in 2015, it was planning for a completely different level of growth and housing targets that we're planning for now, which contributes to the outdatedness of some of the policies in that plan. The London Plan 2021 is obviously more recent and has more weight, and in many respects outweighs and supersedes policies in our own 2015 plan. And our new local plan is emerging, so we can't apply weight to that yet, albeit hopefully soon we will be able to start applying a weight to that as emerging policy at Reg 19. So hopefully that answers the question about relative datedness and how much weight you can attach to different policies. In terms of this London Plan policy around tall buildings, policy D9, As Matthew said, there was a High Court ruling in 2021, I believe it was, which challenged interpretation of that policy. You are right that the first part of that policy promotes requires a plan-led approach in local authorities' development plans, but there's a second part to the policy which sets out a number of criteria that you test tall building proposals against. And what that High Court challenge basically said is it's not one isn't a gateway to the other. So you may not be in an area that's been identified for a tall building, but if you can demonstrate that you've tested a proposal against these other criteria, it could still be found acceptable in the balance when you're considering other matters that you would apply weight to, including, for instance, affordable housing delivery.
I ask you to specifically deal with character, sustainability and design
Yes,
codes.
I was on to
adopted 2
that
months
one next. So the character and sustainability and design codes, SPD, is supplementary planning document, quite right, adopted very recently, and is guidance document. So it's not a policy document, it's guidance for use to inform design and decision making. You're quite right, you pointed out what it says in terms of guidance in there, but once again, you have to test that against the other material planning considerations. So if it pushes above what the guidance says is acceptable on a site, are there other reasons why that might be in the balance, acceptable? And that's at the heart of the debate around this scheme, that particularly around the fact that there's 100% affordable housing being proposed and how that weighs in favour of the development, notwithstanding the issues that have been identified with the scheme. Hopefully that helps.
Right, I can't see any more hands, so can I now invite objectors? Mr. James Fishlock, Catherine Hennessy, and Kevin Goodwin. Sorry. Do you want to add on something?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, so one of the speakers, I believe the first speaker, has got some slides. So I'm going to put the slides on the board. We have checked them. They're images. We can't clarify that they are accurate to 100%. They broadly look okay. We do present you with CGI images reasonably frequently within our own submissions. A pinch of salt is probably the way of looking at this, if that's okay. So if you wouldn't mind not starting until I've got the slides up on the screen as well, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Sorry, guys, we're just waiting for the slides to put on.
Shall I start? Yep. Okay. So, yep. Yep. Okay. Okay. I am Kevin Goodwin, and I live in the Brentford project. In front of you and on the screen are some 3D visualizations. They show the landscape in and around the site's location. This first view is from Brentford High Street, looking towards Fraser's Timber along Ronald Road, which is next to the new Morrison store. Next slide, please, Matthew. Adding the proposed development shows that what was an open green outlook from the public realm on the high street towards the river would be replaced by a prominent brick structure. Next slide, please. This view is from the direction of Syon Park. It shows the step down in building height from the town centre towards the river, achieved under the guidance of a previous generation of planners and decision makers. Slide 4, please. This proposal would undo that achievement. The river itself would also be subordinated, and it is very clear from this picture why Historic England and the Gardens Trust have made such strong objections. So we're going to leave that on the screen, but I now want to turn to the planning balance, which has already been talked about quite a lot. So page 1 is my representation of the various weightings that were given to the factors in the case officer's report. I want to say, first of all, that the planning departments wrote to the developer some time ago, I think when the affordable housing was first being discussed, and requested a reduction in height of at least 2 stories. That hasn't happened. Somehow during the negotiations, that was given up. So it's odd, therefore, that in this balance, without that asked for reduction, it still states that the excessive out of town height and bulk is low to moderate. We would think it should be high, especially as this taller tower, the 10-story tower, is 3 stories higher than the surrounding Ballymore project buildings, which are all around the 7-story mark. The balance also says that the impact on neighbours would be low, which is irrational and lacking in compassion in my perspective. The harm would in fact be significant and cumulative, especially for those living in the residential moorings and in Shire Place. The project is grossly overdeveloped and has no amenity space for anyone over 11, and yet the resulting harm is also rated low, when this very topic contributed to a refusal at last month's planning committee meeting. If we turn over to page 2, I put in an alternative assessment of these 3 harms, which we believe should all be high and are therefore red. Looked at this way, the application plainly causes more harm than good and should be refused. Catherine.
My name is Catherine Hennessy from Ham Wharf Mooring Cooperative. We are a community of 17 legal, permanently moored residential houseboats adjacent to the proposed development. The Ham is a great place to live. It will be a great place for more affordable homes in an appropriate development. But this development at 10 and 6 stories is too tall in this location, a view reinforced by your own policies and planning guidelines. In particular, the Hounslow Local Plan Regulation 19 version, dated July 24, which we understand will be considered by Hounslow Cabinet next week. Policy CC3, tall buildings, is detailed and clear in its guidance. Tall buildings in the Ham are defined as 21 metres and above, so this development at 36.17 metres is tall. Diagram CC34 of the local plan shows the Ham in cluster BR1 and is designated as not appropriate for tall buildings. Furthermore, in the Brentford Town Centre Master Plan, dated March 24, the guidance for the Ham is to maintain a low height datum. Our houseboats are not just picturesque additions in a marketing CGI, they are our homes. No assessment whatsoever had been made of the impact on our single-storey dwellings. The daylight sunlight consultants in their report had neglected to assess the impact on us. The impact on us as neighbours will be significant.
30 seconds to go.
Thank you. As a member of the family that's lived in Brentford since the 1800s, I'm aware of the history and how the town has evolved. The Ham is short for Hamlet, and this was the first settlement in Brentford and is now a mix of small industrial units and 4-storey buildings. We're not talking about the development next door, the Ballymore development. We're talking about the Ham. The parking controls in operation in the Ham. This was brought in due to local garages storing vehicles on the road.
It's time. Sorry. Yep. That's Councillor Loki.
Can you tell us a bit about the parking problems on the Ham, please?
Sure. So there's 19 spaces for vehicles. And there's no parking available in this development proposed. So I believe it's absurd and naive thinking to think people won't visit in their cars. Out of 60 dwellings, no one will have a car. If something can be agreed today from the committee that no parking permits will be given to those that reside in the new development, you will be making a step forward there. Thank you.
Can I now invite the applicants? There are 4 people: Alex Hunt, Dan Pyle, Tom Horn, Zoe Smith, and Tim Burgess. I'll repeat that again. You'll get 5 minutes in total. And I'll let you know when 30 seconds left. You can start when you're ready. Yeah, time starts when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, and thank you to the members of the Planning Committee for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Tom Horn. I'm a Senior Director at DP9 Planning Consultancy, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant team. I also have my client Alex Hunt with me from Town Key Developments to answer questions as well. I'm particularly pleased to be speaking after the new Labour government's announcements yesterday in relation to development and their aspiration for housing delivery and growth. I also see that the 2024 Hounslow Residents Survey providing affordable housing is your residents' biggest priority, something this scheme directly addresses. Fraser's Timber Yard was a modest timber merchants located on the Ham and adjacent to Brentford Town Centre. Sadly, the business was in decline for many years and finally closed its doors earlier this year. There are no planning allocations for the site, so we've been in detailed conversations with your officers to get to this point. The existing buildings had long ago reached the end of their operable life. The spaces inside are inadequate for modern occupiers, the energy performance is non-existent, and the site is significantly underused given its location. The buildings are also of very low quality and harmful to the conservation area. Recent changes to the traffic layout mean that deliveries of any scale associated with the timber merchants are rendered almost impossible. The recent intensification of the neighbouring residential development at the Brentford project and the houseboats which are docked to the canal side have led officers to agree that this former industrial site should be replaced with residential uses. Our scheme seeks to deliver significant additional affordable homes beyond policy. We are proposing a 100% affordable housing scheme. This includes exceeding policy for socially rented units, as has already been discussed. We have 60 homes on site, 24 of these will be socially rented, and 36 will be shared ownership. We've been liaising with a number of housing associations, and the layouts and the mix and the general approach has been endorsed by an operator. With regards to the evolution of the design, this has been developed in close collaboration with your officers, with inputs and influences from the community consultation process and statutory consultees. We occupy a transitional site between the large-scale residential-led regeneration of Brentford that is happening at pace and the more mixed-use and disparate area of the Ham. As a consequence, our buildings step down from the taller elements in Brentford and continue that downward trend towards our immediate residents in Shire Place. I know heights has come up as an issue, but as discussed, there is no policy that precludes tall buildings in this location if the design quality is sufficiently high, and we believe it is. Our building's tallest point is about a storey lower than the tallest point nearby in the Brentford project at Hollandbury House. In terms of the architecture, this has been carefully developed, again in close discussion with your officers. The scheme has settled on the taller element expressing a simple and strong industrial feel with a more diminutive sibling building alongside.
There are heritage considerations that have been discussed given the location of Flora's Column and the site being within a conservation area. We know officers agree there is no harm to the conservation area and the harm to Flora's Column is commensurate with the Brentford project and in any case outweighed by the benefits, particularly the affordable housing. There are also flood risk considerations which we've worked through and as has been discussed, we'll continue to work through with the Council and with the Environment Agency. At ground level, an improved river walk is proposed with natural surveillance and uses. New open space is proposed between the buildings, also well overlooked and including attractive play areas for younger children. A new permeability is also created through the site with views of Syon Park beyond. In summary, the scheme will deliver 60 new affordable homes, 24 will be socially rented, far beyond the policy requirement. The design has been tested with a housing association who are keen to deliver the scheme. We're removing buildings that harm the conservation area. We're introducing new robust and high quality buildings, an improved river walk, new open spaces and views, and a flood risk resilience beyond the 2100 targets. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Members, question? Yeah, Councillor Boring.
If you do receive permission, will you commit to the utilities provision to Confiance, which is your nearest neighbour, namely water and electricity?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll bring in Alex to help answer this question as well. But my understanding is that, as has been discussed, the red line extends within our ownership up to the river wall, in effect. The wall itself is owned by the Canal and Rivers Trust, and the mooring itself, and again, my expression's right, is effectively a lease or a license that's then given out by the owner of that right, which is also not us. So there is kind of several layers of discussion that will go on there. We only have control up within our red line, but we're happy to facilitate conversations. Alex, is there anything else you want to add to that?
I think probably, Councillor, thank you. We already have engaged with the boats in question, and we are seeking to try and make that accommodation as a part of the detailed design development phase, which will be post-committee in a determination.
Can I just stop you there? It sounds like you're trying to fudge and not give me a straight answer. Will you commit to doing it? That's my question.
Absolutely, we'll commit to doing it, subject to working out what they want, and we don't know that at the moment.
It's water and electricity.
Yeah. Okay, but we need to get our scheme together, and we need to understand exactly where they want it and ensure that we can deliver it within our red line, which we will look at as a part of the detailed design development.
Any more questions? Yep, Councillor Williams.
I guess I'll ask the obvious one in the room. Why were you unable to reduce the height? I'm assuming it's viability, but I won't put words in your mouth.
Thank you, Councillor. We did start with a taller building. It was taller than 10 stories. I think we originally discussed in the order of 12 stories with officers. So we did come down during the pre-application discussions, and we have settled on this position. It's always an evolution. The design viability will play a part in this process, but it's at that height because it can deliver all the benefits it can. If it was smaller, it would have less of those benefits.
And how can you reassure Councillor Lukey on his concerns about getting 100% affordable today and it being taken away tomorrow? I understand it's the Guinness partnership you're working with. Can you explain a little bit about where you've got to with them and what the understanding is?
Thank you, Councillor. Well, the permission will be structured for affordable housing. So the Section 106 will have considerable detail in what that affordable housing is, levels of rent, rates of rent, all that sort of stuff that you would expect with affordable housing. And that's a legal agreement between the landowner, whoever that may be, the registered provider, and the council. So as your officers have said, if there's any changes that are requested, there'd have to be a formal planning process, which would come back to a committee for determination. So there's no freedom within our gift to change this. It's only within Hounslows' gift to change it.
Councillor Lal.
Chair, again, I said earlier on that I was concerned for the houseboats on that locality, but also going back on to Councillor Barron's questions about the requirements of one particular houseboat and maybe some others down the line. Did you at any stage? I mean, there is mention in the report about some consultation taking place, but some of the comments, the emails that I've had, is that the consultation was quite poor. Do you want to rebut? I mean, did you do any consultation yourselves with the houseboats? Because you said you weren't aware of the issues, so I'm a bit surprised.
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, there was a full consultation process that involved sort of the wider community as well as the houseboats. So that was undertaken by a separate company that operates that sort of activity. The houseboats were directly consulted, so we had several meetings with them, and Alex attended. Alex attended those meetings. So there's been ongoing correspondence as well as those meetings, and I understand actually that we've tried to help one of those two houseboats find a temporary mooring in the interim. So we kind of that is an ongoing discussion. We're trying to be as open and as helpful as we can be. Alex, is there anything you'd add to that?
I think the return of the houseboats is obviously very important to us and the scheme, because we recognise that they form an intrinsic characteristic to the development as it stands and will contribute to it going forward. So, as Tom has said, we have had some engagement very recently with the directly affected boats outside the river, outside the development, to try and accommodate them whilst the construction works are ongoing, because we recognise it's obviously unsafe for them to remain during the term of the construction works.
Which is at 5 feet from one of the boats that you've asked for.
Excuse me, the members can ask a question if you want to ask to the members somewhere. Only members asking question at the moment, yeah? Councillor Tony Luki.
I can't remember what question you wanted to ask, but the thing about your response to the consultation is several does not mean two, and I know they spoke out of turn behind you, but to what extent did you weigh the comments of houseboat owners when you did your consultation, your widespread consultation across the area? When you know, how many people responded from the houseboats? How many neighbours responded from Shire House and other dwellings on the Ham? If you can answer that, I've got another question as well. Is that okay?
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, just to come back to this point, we have been assisting one of the houseboats fairly regularly to find a temporary accommodation.
That wasn't my question.
But sorry, that speaks to an ongoing dialogue that we've had. So the consultation was just the beginning of the discussions that we're having with those two houseboats. So one of which we've been, as I said, having ongoing discussions with. We've had multiple meetings, and they're happy to move, and we're trying to help them do that. And the other houseboat, well, those conversations are obviously slightly more difficult, but we're continuing to try and have those conversations. And obviously there'll be ongoing negotiations, as Alex has said, to mitigate any impacts that might happen to them. As you would with any other residential user around the site. You know, the Shire base will be treated no differently. We'll have to treat them with respect and sort of professionalism through that building process as well. So I mean, we're trying not to distinguish between any different types of residential uses, because they're all affected in the same sort of way.
No, I agree, but my question to you was, to what extent did you engage with the immediate neighbours, and to what extent did you differentiate the immediate neighbours who live along the Ham, whether on land or water? To what extent did you differentiate with them and look to talk to them about the issues that they raised during the consultation? I do understand there are people living whose views will be spoilt from elsewhere, perhaps, if this went ahead. But it's those immediate neighbours who not only will be affected should it be built, but also during works. Sorry, and you didn't answer that.
Well, so just to pick up, I guess the best way I can answer that, I think, is rather than having a sort of a open consultation that they came along to, the boat owners, we went to them, we had individual meetings with them. So I mean that's kind of where we started. As I say, that's where we started the process from. I couldn't tell you exactly how many. I don't know if Alex can recall, but more than one.
Oh, that's good. More than one. That's all right. Right. Sorry. And my main question that I had is about the tenures here and the affordability. Who's gonna? You're not. Are you representing the? Eventual landlords too, or are you just representing the developers here as planning consultants? That's one. Just so I can be clear.
So we're representing, well, I'm representing Town Key Developments, who are promoting the scheme for residential. There is a commercial agreement that we hope to enter into post-consenting process, because registered providers aren't going to sign on the dotted line until there's a consent in hand. But we're representing the developers, and then that will be passed through to an RP who will then develop the scheme.
My concern is that with a relatively small amount of affordable rent, but a higher number of shared ownership, how I want to know how those people who will be occupying the shared ownership properties, how their bona fides will be checked. So that there's not an immediate, they move in and there's not an immediate step up with money from some third party to buy the balance of their by the balance of the amount they put down, but to make it up to 100%, and then cop a relatively cheap, relatively economic property on the River Brent. How do we deal with that?
Thank you again, Councillor. So that is that's a mechanism that will be dealt with through the Section 106. So the legal agreement will limit income levels of tenants to make sure that that only people who fit that income bracket are able to purchase those properties. And that's obviously a process that is not a process, sorry. That's in perpetuity. So it's those brackets don't just disappear at the point of sale. They remain with the building. So you're effectively guaranteeing that. I mean, I think they'll probably move up with inflation, but you're guaranteeing that they'll stay open and available to those people in housing who can afford them.
But not if a rich uncle or some scrupulous ex-Conservative MP comes and gives them pays a difference and they move out. So that's something that's not clear really with these schemes. So that can't be protected, can it, in the Section 106?
I think
officers, if they can't answer it. They're going to give me a reply. They're talking amongst themselves.
I mean, simply it'll be picked up in the Section 106. There won't be a bank rolling process that you can go through and pretend that you're in that income bracket. It's a means tested process, and the registered providers go through that and ensure that they get the right tenants.
Yeah, I'll let our officers tell us. They usually tell us the truth.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, they will come back later on. Okay, Councillor Kenny.
You Chair, I think my question was asked by Councillor Luki, but I'll ask you again. You have mentioned consultation, but you didn't give us the proportionality. How many objections were there and how many was in favor?
Thank you, Councillor. I think the committee report actually deals with this point quite well and sort of transposes what we've written in our statement of community involvement. I think at the point of this decision, there's about 130 objections, but there's also about 100 letters of support. Thank you, 138. And there's about 103 letters of support as well. So there is a balanced view in the community about the scheme.
You do to address their concerns,
The objectors, Councillor. Actually, I think Leo Hall, the case officer, probably described it quite well. The scheme has evolved a lot since that very early stages. It's a very different scheme to where it was now. Principally it remains a residential scheme, but it also had employment uses on the ground floor. We had a discussion around whether that was appropriate. The form of the building has changed. The architecture has changed a lot. So there's been an awful lot of changes that have come through that process. I probably couldn't point you to one person said one thing, but it's been an evolution through that process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor William, last question, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I guess the one thing I've heard that sort of has me little alarm bells going a little bit was this environment agency issue. It feels like to me the sort of thing that should hopefully have been ironed out before we got here, and it's slightly concerning to me that it's sort of standing out unaddressed with us making a decision tonight. So from your point of view, can you talk us through where we are and what's going on and why we've got to this situation?
Thank you, Councillor. So the Environment Agency, as I'm sure you'll be aware, are a central government organisation who are resourced centrally. It is quite difficult getting them to the table to have these conversations. So we haven't had as many discussions today as we wished or as we would have liked. We've had, I think, 3 meetings with the Environment Agency. The nature of the debate has been slow, I would say. And there is obviously an urgency to delivery of housing and affordable housing. So there is that time pressure from the one side and dealing with the entity. In terms of the detail of their objection, their concerns were around the river wall itself and its resilience over time. So that we made a big change through the process and said, look, we could design it to the flood levels that would be required to do it now, and then it would need to be built up again in a few years' time to hit that 2100 level. But we've actually said, well, actually, if we're going to do this, we'll do it to 2100 level now. So that river wall will be resilient. It's far beyond any other schemes around us. But actually, you'll start seeing a lot of schemes coming up to that level, that 2100 level, because the Environment Agency are banging that drum very, very loudly. Sorry, did you want to come in?
So are you rebuilding the whole wall? Are you starting at zero and rebuilding? I'm just.
No, we're going to build the defences inboard of the existing wall. So we'll use the existing wall because there's no reason not to. It's more disruptive to take the whole thing out in ecology and all that sort of stuff. So again, we don't own the wall, just to reiterate that point. So we're building it inboard of that wall and then building it upwards.
Right. I can't see any more questions. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Matthew, when you do, can you answer the concerns members have?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
There's just a couple of points. Restriction of permits within the control parking zone was requested. That is in the addendum. That will be part of the Section 106 agreement. There was disagreement maybe about the height of the building compared to Hollandbury House. So what they were referring to is the height of the 10-storey element of the building, which is clearly in the slide on the screen in front of you at the moment. On Hollandbury House, there is a tallest point. It's quite that slim element between the double L and A, which is the tallest point of Hollandbury House. I have heights AOD. So the proposed building is 40.9 metres AOD, and the Hollandbury House is 43.85 metres AOD. So technically, it's higher on Hollandbury House. Notwithstanding that, I think I know there is a difference in land levels, not a significant one, but it's comparable. I think that's probably what I'll conclude. Comparable, and likely you wouldn't be able to distinguish it when you're viewing it from the street. So when you're looking at the two buildings, I think that's a comparable height between the two. Councillor Leakey posed a question. If you'd like to re-ask that question, Councillor, sorry, I think I know what you meant about buying it and then reselling it and grandfather agreements in Section 106s, but I don't want to put words in your mouth at the same time.
With such a large number, with a disproportionate number of shared ownership housing being built by the river, which gives it more than a cachet. What's to stop? How do we prevent somebody being allocated one of these places, buying one of these places on shared ownership, and a few months later, somebody, as I said earlier, a sacked Conservative MP comes and buys, gives them the money to, does a deal with them to buy the balance, and then they move out somewhere else, and then they have a prime location and prime property and location to rent out at triple the amount that anybody else would have paid for it if they got it legitimately, properly rather than legitimately.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lukey. This is probably something that would fall to HPPL to deal with, and we do have various things that are in place. We have the advantage, actually, in a case like this, these are leasehold properties, so we would look to work with the RS, the registered social provider, to ensure that we do so in such a way that we build in protections. We do so anyway. We do things like staircasing, which effectively slows that process down. We can build in buyback arrangements. There are various other things that we can do, either to slow the process down or to ensure that the on-sale process is dealt with in as fair a way to ensure that those properties can, wherever possible, come back into the affordable regime for shared ownership. So the number of things that we can do. So even if, and I'll try and be politically sensitive here, even if a sugar daddy does come along, there will be restrictions on the way in which they can do that, both because of staircasing, but also because of restrictions that we would look to build into the lease. So the 106 could well, in a situation like this, include a draft lease that will be agreed with the developers to try and control that process going forward.
That's all. Thank you, Chair. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Matthew. It's open for debate. Members? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like to add some points. I have just heard the applicants and objectors, and a few things I'm not satisfied about that one. First off is the consultations, and the applicants is not sure even for the commit for the providing the utility as well. Looks like for me, it should be the consultation need to be redo again. So I'm not in favor at the moment. I'm not satisfied with the approval this one project. Thank you.
Any proposals?
Before I come in, Chair, I was wondering if Councillor Bowing had conditions, amendments, or anything he wanted to have attached.
Yeah, I think I've discussed if this is approved, what's important. There's been, I think, some conditions we can't do, but I think, Matthew, you're aware of all the necessary things that, if this were to be approved, in my opinion, should go ahead.
Okay, can you clarify, Mr. William, Councillor Williams?
Yeah,
proposing something?
Yeah, I'm
with the conditions.
With the conditions that have been discussed.
Okay, have you got seconders?
Yeah.
Anybody seconding? Yep. Emerson seconded. Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. I'll take a vote for approval. Elma? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. 5. Yeah. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Abstentions?
Sorry, I only got 4.
No.
Everybody you said no. Wait
Okay.
a minute, sorry.
Against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tony's there.
Yep.
Abstentions? I'm abstaining. Okay, so what happened here?
Right, well, we have a draw.
No, there's 5
1,
there.
2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4.
5 and 6 is there. Yeah, can we take
Yeah, can we have
for the proposal again, please? Sorry, in the favor of proposal.
Can we have the yes? Straight up, Chair.
Yeah, sorry. Hands up again, please.
1, 2, 3, 4. Now I've only got 4.
For the favor, yeah.
Yes.
You propose, yeah.
1, 2, 1, 2.
No, hang on. 5.
We do. Yeah, sorry.
By votes, 5 votes in favor, 6 against. Hang on, can we, yeah. Before we do it, yeah, can we take any?
And you need reasons.
Planning reasons, yeah.
Chair, sorry.
Yeah.
It's a straight vote. It's a straight vote.
I know,
For and against.
But that, Then
You
the planning officer needs some reason.
Well,
You've
then the
refused
planning
it.
officer,
You
Chair.
refused it, councillor. That
Yeah.
you need to give reasons.
Yeah.
That's what the
Chair.
law requires you to.
We
All right.
always have, Tony.
Chair,
Yeah.
sorry. I don't think we always have. We have always had to give our reasons for refusal if
Yeah.
we move refusal.
Yeah.
We haven't moved refusal. We have moved, you moved. So, no, you don't need another motion. You have a proposal. Hang
Okay.
on, wait.
Let Tony finish.
wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Go on.
No, no, only if you extend it.
Mm.
Chair. Sorry, you're swearing at me now.
No.
So
No.
look, the application here, the recommendation of officers is to approve this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had a vote.
Yeah.
The vote was lost. Okay.
Mhm.
So that was what was there. We don't need
Okay.
an
now-
application. We don't need another motion to refuse
I
it.
got your point,
We've
Tony.
already got it.
I got your point, Tony. Yeah, Councillor.
Chair, I'd like some clarification from legal.
Yeah.
Because I was assuming the vote was regarding Councillor Baring's request for conditions to be put. That was it,
No,
not whether or not to approve the
I made it very
application.
clear that it's a proposal in favor of approving it. That's what I made clear. Anyway, still need planning reasons.
Well, you need to decide, is there a motion to refuse this, and what are the reasons for refusal?
Yeah.
All you've done at the moment is you've said that there is one more vote against the permission than there is for it.
Yeah.
So is there a proposal on the table because we won't be able to move forward on this application.
Yeah.
It will just keep coming back to you. So you've got to come up with a proposal now, and it is beholden on those of you who have voted against to put a motion up to refuse with reasons, and we need to know what those reasons are.
That's what I said. Yeah. Okay. So we need reasons for refusal.
I'll give you reasons.
Obviously, yeah. Go on.
Look, this is rare, okay? If you look back on the records, let me just preface this. If you look back on the records, we've never had to do this before, okay? It's either a straight vote for or a straight vote against. And then if it's against, then we take our chances with the applicant if they want to mess us about with an appeal. That's how it works. I don't know. I haven't been here with that fella before. Where we've been in this situation, right? Excessive height massing, contrary to the Brentford Town Centre master plan and current SPDs on that. Okay. The impact on river ecology, inadequate provision of amenity space, and the impact on heritage assets. Okay.
Thank you. Is there any more debate? Should I leave it for more debate, or are you happy with me to summarise what's happened to this point?
Sincere apologies for this. When we were counting votes, I counted raised hands and I included Councillor Todd, I'm afraid, who wasn't permitted to vote because he missed the beginning
Which one?
of the debate.
Are they against? Or?
Councillor Todd was an against.
So it's 5-5.
Chair,
Yeah.
can I just, there wasn't actually any debate. You know, we went to a debate, no one said anything, and so we went to a vote. It's split in the room. Perhaps members should say what they think, and we have a vote on a motion of whatever it is that comes at the end of the debate. I don't know, and put a challenge down to
sorry,
actually
Chair,
say something.
If there's 12 councillors here, one can't vote, that's 11, but it's 5 for and 5 against. No, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, not including yourself. So 5 is 10.
Rewind the video there, Gary.
This is shambolic, but I think you are going to have to do this again. I'm really sorry, but this is shambolic. You're going to have to do this again. I'm sorry to do this.
Okay, we'll do it. We'll do it again, but please do your hands up straight like that. Okay. Now, proposal is by Councillor William for the approval. It's been seconded by Councillor Sidhu. I'm taking a vote for approval. Can I have hands up, please, for the approval? Yeah, six rounds, yeah. Okay. Okay, now against? 3, 4, 5. So I'm abstaining. How do we do now?
6-5.
Well, we've still got 12, Chair.
6, 5, 11, 12. So who's not voting?
No, that's 11. There's 11. Look. 1, 2, 3, 4,
1,
5,
2, 3,
6,
4,
7, 8.
Oh, Councillor Todd is not
9.
voting, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine, sir. So it's okay, yeah? So what happened now? So what happened now? 6 in favor.
We've got 6 in favour and 5.
So it's reversed. It's approved now. This second vote. Sorry, people. So this, by 6 votes to 5, this has been now approved. I'm sorry, that's the rules. I can't change that. Okay, thank you very much. Members, can we have a 10 minutes break, please? Yeah. Hi, welcome back. Next item is item 5, Gunnersbury Park, Pope's Lane, Ealing. And who's taking it? Yep. Okay. All yours.
Hi, good evening. I'm the planning officer of the application, and the application is in Gunnersbury Park. This is to install a humanitarian aid memorial with a new public footpath and a branch. So Gunnersbury Park is a listed park, grade 2 star listed, and this is also metropolitan open land. The site, as you can see in this location plan, it is on the northeastern side of the park, close to the existing museum. This is the design of the memorial. This is the 3D view of the memorial. There will be 3 groups of 1.7 meter tall human figures. The diameter circle would be 7 meter. It would be green and white in color. And you can see there are some words on each figures. They are written by persons who are directly affected by the humanitarian works. There would be a path linked to the memorial, and there would be a bench which is 0.9 meter tall, 1.38 meter wide, proposed at the entrance of the path. At the back of that bench would be some details of the works and also a QR code. This is the proposed memorial and the bench. You can see that it would be small in scale and also modest, and the group of figures would not be linked all together. There would be some space among them. So the assessment of us is that that would not affect the setting of the park, and that would not affect the openness of the MOL. And also, it would be mainly visible from this area, from the path next to the round pond. It would be green and white, so it could blend into the trees in the background. The Garden Trust has no concern regarding the visibility of the memorial, but they believe that the bench could be a problem. They believe that it would not enhance the visitor experience. But then the wooden bench would be 0.9 meter tall, so it would be a normal size of a bench in a normal park. And also there would be a condition for the material of the path to address the concern of the Garden Trust. For the heritage, it would be a contemporary development in the park. Historic England do not support the proposal. They believe that Gunnersbury Park contributes to the historic environment of West London. And also they believe that it would be highly visible, and also they believe that it would have less than substantial harm to the significance of the grade 2 star register landscape. They believe that there would be better and less harmful locations for the memorial within the park. So when decided, because of the objection from the Historic England, and also because of the less than substantial harm to the historical assets, the National Planning Policy Framework has guided us that we need to assess whether there are public benefits that could outweigh the harm could be done to the heritage assets. The applicants has done some research before this application. They have reviewed 9 locations in the park, and they have set 11 criteria for the sites, including the proximity to the parking, museum, and also other criteria. And they believe that this is the only site in all the locations that could fulfill all the requirements. And this memorial is supported by our council's cultural team. The cultural strategy that is in development supports the art that are relevant and also accessible. And also our cultural team believe that it could benefit many boroughs communities. And also because the memorial would be part of the collection of the museum in the park. And also there would be a teaching aid. It would also be used as a teaching aid for the museum's primary school program. So they believe that, our cultural team believes that it could benefit the audiences that are less engaged in our community. And also there is another point is that the memorial would be the first in the UK to The memorial would have national importance in the UK as the first and the only memorial to the sacrifice of the humanitarian aid workers, and that would be an annual gathering that would be hosted on site. The national importance of the memorial will have significant weight when decided. So after all, we understand that this is an application that will have some harm to the heritage of the park, but then at the same time, there are some benefits for the community. It will upgrade the collection of the museum. It will improve the experience of visiting the museum and also enhance the school program. So it will align with our local plan policy. And we believe that it will outweigh, the benefits will outweigh the substantial harm to the designated heritage assets. So the planning team has recommended an approval for this application. And also there is a point to note is that in our report, we have mentioned about the application will need to refer to the Secretary of State if that is approved. But then after all, the application, if that is approved tonight, we do not need to refer the application back to Secretary of State. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, a question for the officer? Councillor Boring?
Why has this come before the planning committee? Has there been a call in?
Yeah, this is the
It's been called in by Councillor Neet Gill and he's not here.
Do you know why he's not here or if he's given any reasons?
He should be here, yes. But otherwise, anyway, so questions, any more questions? Yeah, Councillor Todd?
You say Historical England are against it. That's a very significant organisation. Sorry, thank you, Wilmot. You also mentioned that the item is of national importance. Who's giving it that definition?
We understand that Historic England is not supporting the scheme, and they are one of our statutory consultees. We understand that there are some harm to the. They have said that it is less than substantial harm to the heritage assets. So this is a balanced decision after all. And but then at the same time, the memorial would be the first and the only memorial in the country for the humanitarian aid workers. So our assessment is that it will have national importance because that is the one and the only one in the UK.
It's a sweeping statement, isn't it? National importance because it's the first. That's incredible.
Yeah, so our understanding is that that is the first one. And then so when we decide, we believe that it should have substantial harm, not substantial harm, substantial benefits to the community.
Is it correct that they've tried to put this statue up elsewhere and failed?
They have been discussed with multiple local authorities, but this is the first planning application.
Others have turned it down.
They are not planning application. No, so in planning terms,
sorry, I'm talking about, do apologise, you're absolutely right. So I withdraw what I said. Others may have had the option to put it in a park, but didn't. So
we understand that they have been discussed with multiple local authorities, but then our information is that this is the first planning application. And then, so we have our guidelines, we have our local plans, and we have the London plans. So we are using our guidelines to, and also all the plans to do our assessment. If they discussed it with other local authorities, they may not use the same set of requirements and also same sets of documents because that is not a planning application.
What do our cultural teams say in not agreeing with Historical England?
Our cultural team support the scheme because our cultural team believes that it could benefit the primary school scheme. It could benefit the collection of the museum. And also they believe that they could engage with a broader audience in our boroughs that are least engaged. So our cultural team is supporting this one.
Councillor Loki, then come back to you, Councillor.
Are we going to have any presentations on any?
There's questions.
Yeah, I know this is questions, but are we going to have anybody from for and against?
Yeah. They'll come eventually. When they
okay.
Come. Yeah.
All right. Jackie, good to see you again. The image you put up of the proposed sculpture looks like it's got some sharp edges. Is that right? Could a child, like there's a figure there with a skirt on. Could a child run into that and put
So
their
they
eye
have
out?
some yeah, they have some space. This is not altogether length. They would have 3 groups. So basically the idea is that they could hold hands with the figures. So people can walk through and then they can also hold hands with the figures.
No, the question was, is they sharp? Those statues, are they sharp? Somebody can get hurt?
It's a steel, so I do not, yeah.
To what extent could they be hurt on it?
I think to the degree, I'll assist with answering if I can. In order to design and implement this in detail, they'd have to meet other sort of safety standards to ensure that it could be installed in a public place. So beyond planning considerations, it would obviously have to meet those kind of design standards. So it wouldn't be able to be implemented unless it was safe.
Okay, so it's not been made yet. Then is it there on in a container somewhere ready to be shipped down to W3 and
I don't
installed?
know the answer to that one.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, and just one more. Sorry, did any of our officers go down and check any of the 9 potential spaces? I've got no problem with this particularly, apart from maybe is this the only location it can go to? I mean, the Gunnersbury Park is massive, so what it's the that's the question I would ask. Have we been down to check it and had a look and compared the locations? I know we don't do it when we. I know we don't do it on for. No, I'm not going to start on. I'm not going to start on school locations now. But we don't. Have we done that?
The applicant has done a pre-app with us, a pre-application with us, and then they have the information before that. I was not the officer for the pre-application at that time, but then for this application, I have done the site visit. But this is the only location that has been proposed in the scheme. And I have the information that from the applicant is that they have reviewed the 9 locations and then they have the criteria being set. They have 11 criteria that's set by the applicant, and then afterward, that's their decision for the location.
So we don't have any criteria as a planning authority. So we can't. For example, can we put it somewhere else which would satisfy? Could we ask them to put it somewhere else which would satisfy English heritage, and then we won't have to go through all this discussion and debate because we haven't gone to each site that they have suggested that they can't locate it at. Have we been to every one of those 9 locations? I know you might not have, Jackie, because who was the officer? I know that we've got. Yeah, who was the officer that left and that didn't leave you all their notes?
Yeah, but then this is the only location that they has proposed right now. So this is the only location that we can do the assessment at this time.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Lal.
Since I did put my hand up, I will ask a question, but I'll save the rest for the debate. How many residents from London Borough of Hounslow are humanitarian aid workers now or in the past?
Sorry, I do not have that information.
Yeah, we'll do it in a bit. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies if I missed it at the beginning. I'm sure you probably said, what's it made of? How tall is it? What's it made of and how tall is it?
It is 1.7 meter tall. It is made of steel, green and white in color.
And what are the details of English Heritage objection? Is it just that it's something modern in a place with old buildings in?
We have 4 objections, and then that is including the design. Some say that it is not good looking. And then there are several comments related to the proposed meaning of the memorial is not exactly the same as the existing park. And the heritage impact has been misjudged. And then the location of the park is also one of the reasons for the objections. And there are also objections related to the maintenance, which is not a material consideration in the planning application, in planning consideration. And then also the lack of engagement to the local community. These are the objections, some of the reasons for objections.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowling.
What were the park's criteria for an appropriate location? I think I remember from there's something about disability access, toilets, but just could you run through them all for everyone's benefit?
Yeah, that is set by the applicant themselves. It is not set by the council. So this is their criteria that they believe that they should have.
Sorry,
that is including.
I'm just asking if you can tell us what they were.
It includes the proximity to toilets, proximity to the museum itself. Also, sorry, it takes some time. It is the words are too small. Sorry. It is close to parking, close to toilets, close to museum, close to F&B, access from all sides, set in wooden space for seating, within Wi-Fi range, away from traffic, conducive to contamination, avoiding wood harm. These are the 11 criteria that has been set.
Thank you.
So I just thought of another one. You mentioned that one of the benefits is to the collection of the museum itself. I don't know if you could expand on that. I mean, yeah, how does it do that?
It would be one of the collections of the museum. They would use that as one. They would have a scheme to focus on humanitarian aids, and then that would be one of the installation that they use for the primary school scheme, and also about the whole program. That is one of the installation that they would use to provide the information to the public.
Thank you. So I'm clear now.
Okay, Councillor Nagra.
Yeah, I just want to ask that, the humanitarian aid, you made it, is there enough white? Because like children, adults, and the disabled, like people will go inside, are there enough white? Is a safety reason for the children? I'm just concerned about that one. Because you just made in the middle of the park, the children will play, they can walk around, and disabled people, they'll go that, are there enough white?
I think Councillor Nag referring to the width between the three sections.
Yeah.
Yeah, as mentioned, I believe safety is another
I just
issue.
want to know what is the like a size. Can you just tell me how much the width is that?
I do not have the exact width of that one, but then it should be about the size of the holding hands of a person, because the height of the human figures is 1.7 meter tall. So the size is more or less a person size. It allows people to hold hands with the figures. So it is more or less about the size. The diameter of the whole thing is.
All right, yeah. Can I now invite the objectors? It's Val Bott, and that's the only one, isn't it? Val, could you come to the... You'll have 5 minutes, and we'll let you know when 30 seconds left. Yes, please. Yeah.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm representing the Friends, and our committee has spent a great deal of time considering this because we had such concerns when it was first proposed. We don't object to the idea of a humanitarian aid workers memorial, but we object to this one, and we object to this site. Can I start with the historic significance of Gunnersbury? You've just dismissed the impact on Zion Park of a tall block at Brentford, in spite of Historic England opposing it. Gunnersbury is a Grade 2 registered park. It's one of the top 30% in England. It needs to be treated sensitively. Particularly, Hounslow has the benefit of 5 great estates: Chiswick, Brentford, Zion, Osterley and Gunnersbury. It's a richness which you probably take for granted. Historic England is a government advisor and a statutory consultee, and you should listen to what they say because they matter. Their pre-application advice appears to have been ignored. The expression less than significant harm is a technical one. It means that the memorial will not cause the most significant harm. It's a strange way of describing it. They were so concerned about this that they offered to advise on site via the planning officer. The amount of time for consultation was extended, but the applicant did not take up the offer. Historic England regards this as a really significant site, and it's the wrong place. They also say the applicant has not met the requirements of planning legislation, policy, and guidance. Historic England's role is exceptional here. For a very long time, they have championed Gunnersbury. They have put more time into caring for Gunnersbury because they knew what a state it was in, with so many buildings at risk on their register. They've been representatives on the project board all through the lottery work. They've supported major grant applications. They've put £1 million of its own funding in. Very unusual for them to do that. And they brokered a special relationship with the Highways Agency, which has brought in £3.2 million towards Gunnersbury. It is a very, very important champion and supporter of Gunnersbury. And ignoring their advice threatens the future relationship between this major body and the two local authorities that own the park. You're going to need them a lot in the future, and it's very insulting, really. Your decision is about more than the memorial. Your decision is about Historic England's view. The Parks for People scheme, the lottery award, gave Gunnersbury 4.7 million for works to the landscape. Amongst those works was the removal of the 1930s golf course and the opening up of the 18th century parkland there. This sculpture, this installation, is going to be placed in that area that has only recently been opened up. The expression in the planning report is that it is a recovered landscape. A grade 2 registered landscape requires every project to be heritage-based and heritage-led. This one is not. It simply ignores the heritage. It says, this is so good, it's going to be so useful, the heritage doesn't matter. The parkland, we have recently, in the last few years, researched and discovered that this area, from the orangery up to the round pond and the temple, which was a huge orchard, was reinstated in the 1740s as a park by Henry Fernese MP, who was the owner of the estate. And he used William Kent, his friend, who was working at Chiswick House at the time, a very important garden designer. Elsewhere, anybody who knew Kent was involved would be singing their praises. This, they ignore it. The applicant claims this is a transitional area. This is wholly inaccurate in heritage terms. This is a very important piece of parkland. And this is the reason why it is so strange that they have insisted on being near to the toilets and the cafe and the parking and all those other things mean this is the only part of 180 acres where you
30 seconds to go.
Thank you. The memorial is inappropriate. It's not good enough. It was rejected by other sites, including Southwark and Kenwood, and the City of London, which owns Kenwood, did consider a planning application and it was rejected. Michael Landy's used these cutout figures elsewhere. It says more about the artist than the aid workers. It doesn't match the emotional depth that humanitarian aid work inspires. It's trivial. Preserving the memory of lost humanitarian aid workers is a huge task. And
Thank
this doesn't
you
have
very
the
much.
weight. 130 workers died last year.
Thank
and
you. Well,
250 have died in Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank.
thank you. Can you stop that, please? Thank
Can
you.
I just say, please do not approve. The design is trite. The park should be able to provide another
Thank you.
site.
Thank you. Stay there, please. Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions, members? Yeah. Councillor Luki.
Can you put that diagram up that which showed the 9 options or the 9 locations in the, not that one, that one? Yeah. Can you see that one, Miss Bott?
Not really.
Okay. Can you get a closer? All right. Is there?
Don't worry.
Well, look, there are 9 other, there are 8 other locations there. Where could it go if it doesn't go in the place where it's proposed?
I don't think it is for us to suggest a location. I think it's for Historic England to advise. Oh, thank you. That is better.
All right.
But
Okay,
there
different
are
question.
grassy
Go on.
spaces where it would fit, which are not so significant. But you are dealing with a Grade 2 registered park, an 17th and 18th century park. It's really very sensitive.
Yeah, I know, but we've got sports centre there, and
That's the sports centre's not in the parkland.
right, but it's there though, isn't it? It's there in Gunnersbury. Where could it? Yeah, you've got number 6 there. Why can't it go to number 6, or could it go to number 6?
Which one is number 6?
Well,
Sorry.
the one which says number 6. Is that tennis courts there? No, what's those green square? What's that green
No, that's
square?
by the rather raucous putting green thing.
There
I
you
don't
go.
think that's appropriate. I'm sorry, I am not going to help you to decide on an
I
alternative
didn't ask you to help
site.
me. I'm just asking.
can't do
Yeah,
it.
all right. Don't help me then. Thank you very much.
Look, you can see how many options they've looked at, and none of them is very far from toilets, cafe parking, and all the other things.
All right then. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions? Nope. Thank you. Well,
No,
sorry.
Reese?
Oh, yeah, go on. Councillor Williams.
I guess it's a similar question to the one before. Is your understanding of their objection, and is your objection to the way it looks? Is this an aesthetic question?
It's not aesthetic. It is about gravitas. It has no weight for the issue it is meant to memorialize. We are very upset that you ignore Historic England's advice on the location when the park is so big. But we are also concerned. It's not something that Gunnersbury would ever have wanted to collect. It's not the applicant says it has a life of 25 years. Museums are about preserving for posterity. It doesn't fit with any of that. But it is also completely trivial. A group of cutout figures does not memorialize the thousands, the hundreds of thousands of people who've died doing good in difficult, terrifyingly dangerous situations. And I think if we were being asked to talk about it when they were first thinking of it, the Friends would have talked to the Remembering Humanitarian Aid Workers group about what we thought might be weighty. But we're not looking for a war memorial with all their names on. But this somehow seems to be so light for something so weighty.
Isn't it trying to engage children mostly? I mean, I was thinking, well, the location must be in relation to the fact that you're not asking adults to walk a long way, you're asking children, you know, that it's been played. I assume that children are. And I mean, I'm just looking at it going, it's modern in an old park. I get that. I've got a 2-year-old. I reckon she'd quite like it. I don't, you know, from what I've taken her around and what she's seen, I imagine she would instantly go up to that and engage with that. And I imagine that would be true all the way through. I struggle with being asked to make artistic decisions and to second guess artists' impression of things at a planning committee. It feels, you know, it's amazing we can't get anything done in this country. I don't know. I'll leave that with you. Please tell me, come back at me.
I don't think a 2-year-old would understand about humanitarian aid anyway. But the website of the organisation that is promoting this actually said the memorial is intended to recognise and remember not only those who've died in the service of people in need, but also all those inspired by the humanitarian ideal who continue to dedicate themselves to help others around the world. The memorial is to be a celebration of lives well lived rather than a traditional monument to the dead, encapsulating the best of humanitarian tradition and principles, humanity, independence and impartiality. I can't see any of that in this circle of metal figures. And the Friends have debated this to the point where we thought we just can't say that we think this is wonderful. Thank you.
Can I now invite the applicant, David Bowler, Jordan Kaplan, and Chris Jones? That's it. Again, you'll have 5 minutes in total, and we'll remind you when 30 seconds left. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Chris Jones is the planning consultant for the Gunnersbury Trust, the charity that stewards the park for the next 25 years under a contract with the 2 councils. Chris will lead off on the planning element. And then I'm also joined by Jordan Kaplan, who is from the Contemporary Art Society that supported the organising committee for this sculpture, which was made up of retired chief executives of the world's leading humanitarian aid organisations and is actively supported by the Disasters Emergency Committee. They raised the money for it. Chris.
Thank you. I'd like to start by clarifying Historic England's position on the application and their comments. Historic England does not object to the principle of the installation of the memorial within Gunnersbury Park, but flags that there are other locations in the park that would be less harmful. We do not dispute this. However, it's clearly not appropriate to site a memorial of this significance on a playing field or in a position that is not accessible to people with mobility issues. Site selection within Gunnersbury Park has been sensitively considered over the last 2 years and has always been a careful balancing act, weighing up the physical, functional, and experiential requirements of the memorial against other considerations, including heritage impact. A methodical and detailed assessment has been undertaken of all the potential locations in the park, which has been demonstrated in the comprehensive submission material. Following this sequential approach, the proposed location is the clear winner, including when balanced against heritage impact, as outlined in the submitted heritage appraisal. Historic England's consultation conclusion is that the siting of the memorial in this location would cause harm, but that harm would be in the lower category of harm as identified in the NPPF, that is, of less than substantial harm, not substantial harm, or not total loss. Furthermore, Historic England acknowledges that in paragraph 208 of the NPPF, that less than substantial harm can be outweighed by public benefits. At this point, it's important to note that Historic England, as a heritage body, is not in a position to fully consider the breadth of public, social, and economic benefits that this memorial could deliver to the park and to Gunnersbury as a whole. This balancing act is up to the local planning authority to determine whether these are outweighed and whether these do outweigh the less than substantial level of harm. The council's planning department has undertaken this balancing exercise and was recommended by the council's professional officers to approve the development because of the extensive benefits being delivered and that these clearly outweigh the impact caused, which is satisfying the NPPF and satisfying of London of Hanslo's policy CC4.
Very briefly, in terms of the public benefit, I think we take the view that introducing a sculpture with the theme of this into the park is a tremendous opportunity for the park to move in a contemporary way, but still respecting its roots as a historic estate. The park has been in existence as a public park since 1926, nearly 100 years. Over that time, it has evolved. This, we feel, is a well-managed and considered evolution of what a park of this stature in a community of the great diversity that we enjoy in both Hounslow and Ealing, we believe this is making the park more contemporary, more relevant, and more representative of the multitude of communities and experiences that we enjoy as local neighbours. In terms of its aesthetics, I will turn to Jordan, because aesthetics are, of course, a subjective issue. However, I want you to understand the procurement route for this that the sponsoring fundraising committee of humanitarians actually undertook. Jordan, if you could summarise.
So, yeah, it was a very robust process bringing Michael Landy into this organisation to propose an artwork. We developed a long list of internationally recognised artists who were international themselves, because it's very important. This is the first humanitarian aid memorial in the world. So that's why we consider it to be of national significance.
One in Canada and one in Australia.
This is what I'm talking about, because I do have the floor, is that this is a purpose-built, determined memorial. And as such, we take it very seriously. We produced a long list. We then brought down a group of 8 artists to 3 artists. And Michael Landy was unanimously agreed by this very large and revered group of people who head up NGOs and who work daily as humanitarian aid workers themselves and have lost loved ones. We also worked with what we called a reference group, a group of individuals who had lost loved ones, who had been substantially injured with life-altering injuries. And
Thank you.
approved.
It's time, yeah. Okay, question, Councillor Lal first.
Chair, my question is to give the opportunity for them to give me some clarification on the objector, which some of the things that Val had to say resonated with me in the sense that she said that, I mean, we all applaud the work that the humanitarian aid workers do, and clearly recognition should happen. But trivial and lacks gravitas, it hit me in the sense of the design. And I think Councillor Williams also mentioned that we're looking at aesthetics and we're being a bit subjective on it. So it's not maybe part of the planning committee to be so subjective. But do you have anything to say on that point, that the actual memorial itself, it just lacks the punch, it lacks the gravitas for such an important issue?
I would suggest that the aesthetics of the memorial are important. We're not trying to create an object that is filled with horror and trauma. What you do see, which probably wasn't fleshed out quite as well as it could have been, is each of the 15 figures has handwriting across its chest. And each of these 15 figures is telling the story of either a recipient of humanitarian aid or a giver of humanitarian aid. These 15 stories were canvassed from aid agencies all over the world. We have many more. We will be, in the fullness of time, if we're able to do it, if you allow this to happen, we will be setting up web pages where more of these stories can be told, and members of the public will also be able to add. We don't want to create something full of horror. We genuinely want to celebrate lives well lived. And I would say, if you find it childlike, that's not an issue for us. That's not an issue for the organising committee. It's not an issue for the reference group. It's not an issue for the art world. I don't think it would be an issue for the children and families who would encounter this object in the park. We would like it to be welcoming and inclusive and tell a story without terrifying.
Okay. Boring.
My question was asked by Councillor Lal and effectively answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Mine was going to be similar to give you a chance to address the aesthetic concerns. You mentioned all the groups for whom it's not an issue. I don't know if you've got feedback from the international aid community itself on what they think of it.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
well, what do they think of it? Because obviously it's their world that it's
Yeah,
supposed to be representing.
The feedback is that they're incredibly supportive of having the memorial, and that they're really, really delighted that somebody might want to present stories, their stories, and such a dispersed, wide variety of stories. So, you know, midwives being driven around under armed guard, but telling stories of birth and life. Humanitarian aid runs the gamut of human experience. So there's a lot of support within the humanitarian community. Brendan Gormley, who's the ex-director of the Disasters Emergency Committee, is sitting with us today. But because we could only be 3, he wasn't allowed, we didn't let him up. But if he wanted, I don't know if you can ask him questions, but he can certainly speak for the humanitarian community.
Well, if my question was better addressed to him, I'm happy if he wants to come up and answer it. If the chair will allow it.
I will allow that, yeah. If you want to. Could you please, yeah?
Councillor. I chaired the subcommittee that chose the artist, and we had the outgoing director of the V&A as our advisor. And I think you've heard a very good summary of the tension we wanted between engagement and peace, because we wanted, we set a very high bar for finding a place that had tranquility plus engagement. And we found a potential host that offered those somewhat contradictory needs. And we also gave that same brief to the artist. So It has all the rest of my committee were the heads of the Red Cross, Save the Children, Oxfam. So the aid community was well represented, the art establishment was well connected, and it met, as you've seen, the sort of 11 criteria. On the issue of national importance, at the moment, Westminster Abbey offers us once a year a multi-faith evensong and rose laying at the west door, and that event will move to Gunnersbury. So it really is of national and international importance. And I think the key message that we've also wanted to go, or will want to get across, is the aid worker is the granny, it is the neighbor, it isn't the angels of mercy that we sometimes get rather hung up about. So the ethos of this piece is to be inclusive, and hence we wanted footfall, we wanted a host community that reflected the diversity of humanitarian aid. And we're proud to be putting this before you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Luki.
Mine's a little bit to do with aesthetics, but it's how you're going to maintain it. I asked a question about sharp edges. It looks sharp there. I don't know, but you can tell us. How's it going to be maintained? How are you going to keep it graffiti free? How are you going to deal with worn out paint and worn out grass?
Okay. So I work at Contemporary Art Society. I'm a senior art producer. I've been working in the public realm for about 25 years. There are no sharp edges. We thought about that very early on. They're curved. So what you have are pieces of steel. There's a form inside, two pieces of steel slapped on either side, and then a ribbon going round. And that's how they're constructed, essentially. The foundations would not disturb the soil. They would be essentially like giant corkscrews. You screw them in. So we're not talking about putting cement into the ground. The finish on the steel is paint. It's like an automotive car paint. And then there are several layers, what we call sacrificial layers, painted on top, so that when graffiti does happen, because graffiti does happen, you wash down one of the sacrificial layers and more is applied. That's part of the maintenance regime. Apart from that, the maintenance should not be any different to any piece of park furniture, like a bench or a bin. Very important. That said, there is an endowment. I've read there's an objection that it's going to cost Gunnersbury money. There's an endowment set aside in the finance of this project, which I have to say Gunnersbury would not be paying for. The money has already been raised. No, it's not been made. It's not sitting in a shipping container. It's a reasonable question, but that's not what's happened. We would like to make the work and gift it to Gunnersbury and accession it into the Gunnersbury collection. Michael Landy is an important artist. Yes, this work does look like some of Michael Landy's other work. That's not an issue. You wouldn't say that one Rembrandt looks vastly different to another Rembrandt. This is part of an artist's oeuvre, if you will. However, it's not taking away from the messaging of the humanitarians that this artwork looks similar to the artwork he made for Transport for London, which was called Acts of Kindness. He's been using the cutout figure since he was a young British artist, or YBA. I can't remember what else you asked.
It was keeping
the grass.
The grass, yeah,
Okay.
not letting it wear out.
Yeah. So there was a slight misunderstanding in the Garden Trust's assessment of grass. We're not proposing. So we've got a 7-meter diameter circle, and you've got a path leading up to it. The path would look just like all the other paths at the site. And then in the center, what we would have is like a compressed gravel, 10 mil gray gravel, which is pressed down, because we know that if we put grass there, it would just get churned up and make an awful mess. The endowment, as I say, is there so that repairs can be made. not at Gunnersbury's expense.
If I could just, Chair, if you'll indulge me, just add from Gunnersbury Trust. The intention is the piece is accessioned into the museum collection. We're a national portfolio organisation museum. We're the only local history museum in London that has MPO status directly from the Arts Council. That means we're recognised as a museum of excellence. My curators, of which I am fortunate to be able to fund two, will be curating and conserving this piece because it will be part of our museum collection. Our gardening team, which any of you have been to Gunnersbury, I hope to see that we've made great improvements around the planting, etc. My gardening team will be looking after all the grounds maintenance issues around the bench, the path, and the footings of the sculpture. As was said, we've been working with the organising committee for 2 years to try and make this viable and to deliver something that we honestly and genuinely, as a charity, with education as one of our central planks, feel would be an enormous benefit to multiple generations of Hounslow residents. And we feel this is an extraordinary opportunity for the borough and the borough's community. We're just stewards. That's all we are. We just steward this for the greater good of the community.
Thank you. Yeah, go.
So how would, if it was given permission and installed, how would it be sort of commemorated annually, or how would it be celebrated annually as a theme, humanitarian theme?
Well, as Brendan mentioned, there is this annual coming together on World Humanitarian Day in the middle of August. And we would be moving that Evensong celebration, which is held in a church, an amazing church, into a much more secular site, outdoors, ideally when the sun is shining. And there is an itinerant group of people who come every year, and for better or for worse, every new people come. There will, unfortunately, I believe, always be a need for this place of reflection. And what we're asking for is a site, and this particular site, where some of the people who come annually really do have mobility issues. And there are reasons for their work in the humanitarian field that have, done this. But of course, many people have mobility issues. We want that work to be accessible. We want it to be close enough to a drink of water, close enough to a car park for a wheelchair to be removed. We don't want it to be tucked away in a corner, specifically because it is an important object. And that celebration usually involves several hundred people. So we would expect that that would be happening on an annual basis.
Chair, if I could just speak to that, it is relevant. Councillor Luca, the issue here is we want to move beyond one day. And so we currently educate 15,000 of the borough's school children at Gunnersbury, and we want to work a year-long education programme so that we actually, for want of a better term, we mainstream this, because it is part of all our lives on a constant basis. So we celebrate at that annual. We want this to be part of the weave and weft of our community.
All right, thank you. I don't see any more hands. Thank you very much. Jackie, would you like to add on anything?
So there is, thank you, Chairman. So there is one question about the width of the space in between the figures. It would be 1.25 meters width of the space in between. And also this application is supported by our conservation team in Hounslow. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Boring first, yeah.
Chair, I think this is a fantastic piece of artwork. I think it covers an incredibly important subject. I think it will enrich the cultural aspect of the borough, and I think we should approve it.
Right, so you're moving it, yeah?
Hold on, we didn't do a debate last time, and that was a problem.
Okay.
I'll retract my my moving temporarily.
Okay, Councillor Williams.
Well, to be fair, I didn't think you
Yeah,
moved it, but you just said you approved of it, and I was going to say, I mean, the only good thing about this being called in is it's given us all an opportunity to see what an amazing opportunity it is and to talk about it in public and to learn about it. You know, do I like the way it looks? I mean, it's not really the point. It's engaging and it's important, and we've engaged with it and we've learned a lot already about it. I really, for the life of me, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I don't like the color, or I don't like the size of it. Maybe it's too modern. It's a fantastic thing, and it's obviously the park wants it, and the park's an important asset. And anything that helps the museum and anything that enables us to do good things in this borough, that puts it on the map, this seems like a perfectly good thing to be doing.
Thank you. Councillor Lal?
Chair, it's solely right that I retract from my earlier statements. Yes, I did have some misgivings about the trivial nature and the gravitas of the structure, but I think you've done a tremendous job in selling the concept and explaining a lot more in detail about it. And I think to be first nationally to do something like this would be fantastic. And I think Gunnersbury Park, yeah, it's a historic heritage site in its own right, and it has that appeal. And that appeal could be a positive in the sense that it'll help to further springboard this project, as you already mentioned, with school children and maybe a project far wider than just our local area. So well done, and I think it's good to go.
Thank you. So it's been recommended for approval. Anybody approve?
I formally move we approve this application.
Okay, can I have a seconder for that? Okay, the number of seconders. Okay, I'll take a vote. Please raise your hand high for the approval. It's unanimous, yeah. No, go ahead, yeah, okay. Against? Nothing. Abstention? Okay, nobody against, one abstention. The application has been approved. All right, thank you.
Chair, we're approaching 10 o'clock, which is the 3-hour
Yeah.
rule. Can I
Yeah.
suggest that any vote is moved now?
Chair, move extension of standing orders till the end of business.
I'll second that. Can we, yeah, until we finish the, yeah. Thank you. Right. Okay. No. Right. Item 6, 106, 110 Witton Road. I think Nathan's taken it. Yep, all yours.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors and members of the public. My name is Nathan Ringer. I'm the case officer for this application at 106 to 110 Witton Road. The application site is located on the corner of Park Road and Witton Road. The proposal is for the regeneration of the site to provide 434 square meters of Class E retail floor space on the ground floor, in addition to 7 homes across the first and second floor level. Here is an aerial image of the site from 2022. You'll see the former Fiat garage, which was a 1-story L-shaped building in the middle of the site. The Fiat garage has been demolished, and this picture here is what the site currently looks like. Opposite the site, we have the small neighborhood center, 87 to 99 Witton Road. On the screen now, you can see that parade, a 3-story building with 2 convenience stores, a mixed martial arts academy, hairdresser, and hot food takeaway, with a pharmacy on the opposite side of Argyle Avenue, just on the left-hand side of the image. This is 104 Park Road, directly to the north of the site, sharing the site's boundary. Here is 112 Witton Road, on the opposite side of Park Road to the south of the site, and you can see 2 habitable windows at first floor level facing the proposal. And this is 6 Park Road, separated from the subject site by a 5-meter access way. here is the pre-existing site plan and the pre-existing elevations. As mentioned, the proposal is for 400 square meters of Class E floor space on the ground floor, with the 7 homes arranged in an L shape on the first and second floor level. There'd be 6 2-bedrooms and 1 3-bedroom. The principle of the land use on this site is supported. The marketing information was provided to show that sufficient marketing took place between March 2022 and August 2023, with no interest to take the vacant car showroom, and the principle of its demolishment of it being demolished is considered acceptable. The 7 new homes is also supported in a sustainable location, and the new retail floor space opposite a small neighborhood center would intensify the existing use and would contribute to the parade's vitality and viability, in line with policy TC5 of the local plan and the intent of the Character, Sustainability and Design Codes SPD, and would provide approximately 22 to 29 full-time equivalent jobs. The ground floor plan is now shown on the screen. The residential entrance is to the south on Park Road, with the commercial entrance via Witton Road, and a new loading pad for the deliveries and servicing for the Class E units on Witton Road. The communal amenity space would be at podium level at the first floor. You can see there, with a mixture of green roofs as well as private amenity space in the form of balconies. And again, this is the second floor level. This is the Witton Road elevation, so a 3-story building is considered high quality design, would provide significant benefits in terms of its comparison to the existing site and in terms of design. It would also avoid harm to the living conditions of neighboring properties in terms of daylight, sunlight, outlook, and privacy, and would provide a good standard of accommodation. The proposal would be car-free, and the existing vehicular access to the site would be removed. Commercial and pedestrian access is via Witton Road and Park Road for the residential. The development would not result in an increase in local parking stress. 4 additional spaces would be provided on Park Road, following the removal of 1 space on Witton Road to facilitate the loading pad, and a £30,000 contribution towards the implementation and consultation of a controlled parking zone has been agreed. And as mentioned, deliveries would be undertaken from Witton Road and would preserve pedestrian and highway safety, with a final delivery and servicing management plan to be secured by condition. The proposal would also deliver significant ecological benefits, with vast amounts of green soft landscaping provided at street, podium, and roof level. And that would also improve the public realm in this area too. A consultation event took place for this application in April. We presented an amended scheme to residents to listen to their concerns regarding the development. After the meeting, additional parking survey data was provided, and benches were removed from the proposal following reports of antisocial behaviour around the site, and bins were also added to tackle existing issues with fly tipping. And the application is recommended for approval, subject to the submission of a legal agreement and the recommended conditions.
Thank you, Nathan. Questions for the officer? Yeah, Councillor Luki.
As always, and I know we've had some problems with other larger developments, not least Rothbury Gardens. Where's the waste? How's the waste going to be stored for collection? Where in this development, please, Nathan?
So I've just pulled up the proposed ground floor plan. You can see to the south of the site there is a residential bin store just next to the residential entrance, and then to the east, access via the accessway, is the commercial bin, plant, and cycle store. The location of the stores are within suitable distances to the road to be picked up within 10 meters, and full details of the actual waste store provision will be secured by condition in terms of the quantity of bins that would be provided.
Just on that, how well insulated will the flats above be from the smells from the refuse area? Anybody knows Fraser Nash Close? Never been in there. the smell from the bin store permeates upwards. For example, and I'm sure other locations in the borough where we've got flats. How are we going to how can we condition ventilation, but also sealing the bin store from the flats above?
So, firstly, the commercial bin store would be located away from the habitable rooms. So, I think the principal issue that you're citing would be the residential bin store. In terms of ventilation, all of the dwellings are dual aspects, so would have that natural ventilation through that arrangement. However, we could, through the waste condition that is currently within there, it could be amended to get details of the doors or the sort of exterior of the store to ensure that measures were put in place to ensure that odors don't escape out of that area and up towards residential units.
That would be really good, because I don't think we pay too much attention to that at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Bowry.
Hi, Nathan. In your report, you sort of highlight some shortfalls in the cycle parking. I think you knew I was going to say that.
Yeah.
Could you, and you make a reference to the possibility of a condition, Sheffield stands and larger cycles. Could you just unpack that a bit, please?
Yeah, so we typically seek for 50% of the store to be Sheffield stands and 50% in the double tier bracket. I believe for this, only 2 Sheffield stands were provided and the rest were in those double tier stands.
2 out of 14, 16?
Yeah, 2 out of 14 for the long stay residential parking. You'll see on the screen that the short stay and the long stay commercial is completely Sheffield standard in an appropriate layout. But yeah, just for the residential parking, yes, 2 out of the overall 14 spaces are Sheffield stands. So we would get a revised layout.
Can we secure that by condition tonight?
Yeah, that condition is already in there. I mean, it's actually 2 Sheffield stands to provide 4 spaces. But yeah, that condition is already in there with a caveat to have a different layout with a 50% Sheffield stand provision and then 5% for larger cycles as well.
Sorry, so you're telling me that that is going to happen, then it doesn't need to be secured by condition by this committee?
No, as in the condition is already in the report. So there's a condition to secure revised cycle parking beyond what's on the proposed plans.
So we don't need to secure that by a condition here at this committee?
Not additionally, I'll just confirm the number that it was condition 28 within the report covers cycle parking.
Councillor Lal.
Chair, in the report, it mentions about the amenity space, the communal amenity space, and the overall amenity space. There's some kind of mitigation in there, in the sense that one is over, one is under. Is this again acceptable in normal practice?
Yeah, I consider the provision to be acceptable. There is some dwellings have an over provision of private amenity space. That is, of course, factored into the overall calculation anyway. So the current provision sits at around 50% of what we would expect it to be for development of this quantum. However, my assessment is that given the constraints of the site, it's a small site, and providing other benefits in the form of the commercial store, that they have maximized the amount of space that can be provided, particularly at podium level. And we also discussed throughout the application tweaks to the arrangement just to try and improve the quality as much as possible. For example, a hydration point was added and changes to the layout of the benches just to make it a more social environment.
Right, I can't see any more hands. Would you like to add on something before I? No?
Nothing for me, Chair. Thank you.
Debate.
Chair, yeah. So when I first saw this the design, I was and read the report. I was quite shocked. There were 6 amendments since December 23 to get to the stage where we are. And having seen the photograph of what the site looks like, it looked like that for about 1.5 years. Well, that's terrible, right? So I'm glad that some things become of that site. The other thing I looked at the design, which I did like, is that stepped approach and to reduce the mass and the bulk. I think that was definitely a good move. but all in all, I think it blends in with the general street scene. The properties opposite are about 3 stories, so it ticks all the boxes as far as I'm concerned.
Anybody proposing anything? It's recommended for approval. Yep, Danny.
I propose we approve this application.
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. Hands up high for the approval. It's unanimous. Nobody against, no abstention. So it's been approved. Right. Next item is item 7, land south of Staines Road, north of Ascot Road, Clockhouse Lane. And who's taking it? Sorry?
Probably.
Don't know.
I don't think they would have wanted to stay for everything else. This time of night.
53. Right, it's page 93 to 160. And Ahmed Ali is taking it, yeah? All yours.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we'll be discussing the application at land south of Staines Road, north of Ascot Road and Clockhouse Lane. This is a site location plan. For context, the middle portion of the site is in Greenbelt. The site is adjacent to an existing LSIS of the council and is part of the Heathrow opportunity area. Moving on to a breakdown of the site with an aerial image. Plot 2 in the northeast corner is home to Unit 1, with Plot 1 in the southwest corner being home to Units 2 and 3, and landscaping and a relocation of the pond currently in Plot 2, moving to the central Greenbelt portion of the site. So this is a proposed site plan showing the access of Clockhouse Lane for Unit 1 and Ascot Road for Unit 2. The proposal is for 10,377 square meters of employment floor space in use classes, e.g. III, industrial process, B2, general industrial, and BA storage, and has associated ancillary offices, access, servicing, parking, landscaping, and the aforementioned engineering works. The buildings or the structures to be developed in the overall development would be 0 carbon and targeting an EPC rating of A and BREEAM Excellent. The site is currently vacant, home to invasive species, and the application would remedy previously contaminated land, remove invasive species, and introduce ecological measures to protect biodiversity. There's also improved highways facilities on Clockhouse Lane, including a dedicated pedestrian, cyclist, and sort of end user access point along a part of Clockhouse Lane, which currently does not have a footway. The proposal would have 99 car parking spaces, 20% of which would have active electric charging vehicle provision, 80% passive, and it would be providing a policy compliant 7 disabled parking spaces. It would also provide 38 circle spaces in the form of Sheffield spans with an appropriate provision for larger/cargo bikes. That was the elevations for Unit 1, which previously I had the plans up, and now we're moving on to the proposed plans for Units 2 and 3 with their proposed elevations, some site sections, and an indicative landscaping plan. I'll go back yeah, that's it for me.
Questions? Yeah, Councillor Lal.
So I'd like to know that the land in the middle, the Greenbelt land, would that be open to the public?
It would not be open to the public. It's a recreation space for the employees. This proposal would be projected to provide approximately 213 full-time jobs. So in part, it's a recreation area. There are also internal paths within it, which would mean, for example, an employee of Unit 1 coming from the south of the site wouldn't have to follow Clockhouse Lane all the way around. They'd be able to benefit from an internal path inside.
Yep. Any more? Huh? Okay. Any more questions? Yeah, Councillor Boring.
What's that? Is that greenbelt area open to the public currently?
No, it's not. The entire site is vacant and surrounded by hoarding at present. But this is part of the Lower Feltham Greenbelt area, which essentially has a hard northern boundary of Staines Road, runs through the middle section of this site before expanding eastwards, westwards, and continuing southwards, and includes other areas such as the Bedfont Office Lakes.
Sure. And the cycle parking, it's all policy compliant, worked out by the number of employees. What sort of numbers of cycle parking are we got? I didn't catch that.
Yep. So the proposal, it does depend on the final uses on site, but at the moment, approximately 213 full-time jobs. The proposal in general, based on its floor area and its proposed uses, would need to provide 38 cycle spaces, and we have a condition 13, which appropriately sets that out at a later stage.
So it should require 38, and we've got a condition that says 13.
No. To confirm, condition 13 is
condition
for cycle
13.
store, which touches on the specification, etc.
And are they? How many of those are Sheffield stands?
All are Sheffield stands.
Wonderful. Well done, Kieran.
Can't see any more. Yeah. Would you like to add on anything? No, happy? Okay, open for debate quickly. Yeah.
Chair, I mean, those who are around long enough would know that this site has been vacant for quite some time. And I think the last time I sat on a planning committee way back, we tried to put a hotel or development on this site. The site has been disused for such a long time. It's an eyesore, and I'm glad that an application is before us to put that land to good use. And obviously, the locality is ideal for probably this kind of setup. And I hope this time around it actually gets done.
You're going to move it then?
Go and
Councillor?
remove something?
Well,
No,
I
nobody
don't
else
know,
is doing anything.
Well, I've got something to say actually
Yeah,
on
go
this,
on.
Chair.
Go
I move that we approve this application.
You're a funny guy.
Can I have a seconder?
sometimes,
Can I have a
yeah.
seconder, please? Yeah, okay, a couple of people seconding. Okay, moved, seconded, recommended for approval. Can I have the show of hands, please, for approval? Again, unanimous? Nobody against, no abstentions? Approved. All right, thank you. And the next item is addendum report. I think you've all seen it. Take a seat,
Chair,
Mr. William.
Chair.
Yeah. Huh.
Chair, on this,
Yeah.
if you allow me. We only go back a couple of months on these on these planning enforcements.
Mm-hmm.
See you later, guys. Cheers.
Okay.
We only go back a couple of months on these. I would really like to see some historic stuff because I've got planning enforcement issues in my ward that go back about 4 years. So, you know, I'd really like to, if you're not going to present it here, but I think, you know, I'd really like to see it because otherwise we're not going to be able to measure the effectiveness of planning enforcement. So can you do that for us, please? And do it by ward as well? I know you sometimes do it, but it's not complete because not all my items, all the items I know about appear on your list.
There's a monthly report that Matt Robertson produces that's got an update on all enforcement cases and status and stat, and we can provide that. We can send that on to you if you don't already get that.
That's just in a document. Yeah, how about a spreadsheet that takes you back, takes you back to I don't know when's the I've got something going back to about 2015, for example.
I think it has got a table that's got all the cases going back. We can review that, make sure you've got what you want.
Easier to read. That would be
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Thank you. Next item is any other business. I've not been told of any. Next date for the next meeting is 1st of August. With that, close the meeting. Thank you for your help. Can I leave this with you?
You certainly can, Chair, that's you.